across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
It's 2 minutes past 6. Good morning and welcome to Monday. It is, of course, glorious here at Morning Glory because we've got 4 fantastic hours for you from now until 10 o'clock to give you all the news that's fit to print, everything that you need to know, and even some of the things you didn't know that you needed to know to get yourself going for the week. Morning Glory, of course, from 6 to 10. Tom Slater's here with us for Spikes Online. We'll be looking through all the big stories in the papers, and much like last week, there is a recurring theme, and that recurring theme is that the Labour government is completely and utterly useless, right? Rachel Reeves has been over in China. She's been doing some kind of deal. She's managed to come back with a deal worth £600 million, and I'm reliably assured by many people that many other countries in the world have got much better deals with China. I think even the Galapagos Islands gets more money to look after their various animals that nobody else can see anywhere else in the world. But the good news is, of course, Rachel Reeves is a woman.
When Rachel Reeves stands up, she will be making history. And I can tell you, young women and girls across the country will be watching, they will look up, and they will notice.
And they'll say, why does that woman look so depressed? Apparently she's depressed. She's worked out that her job is actually quite difficult to do. She can't do it. And according to one wag inside the cabinet, she's worked out that she's got all sorts of different options and none of them are any good at all. Also, it looks like she's going to be replaced. I mean, it's now openly being discussed, not only in the corridors of power, but all over Westminster. So if Rachel Reeves lasts until June, you will be a very, very lucky boy indeed. I think she'll be gone, if not by the end of the week, probably by the end of March, because there's going to be some kind of mini budget brought along. Front page of the Telegraph has got her clamping down on various different government departments, and the Cabinet have been told the cuts to those departments must be ruthless. The Treasury warns of more difficult decisions as markets put economic plan under pressure. Well, if you think any of the government unions or any of the departments of government are actually going to willingly give up money so that Rachel Reeves can keep her job, I think you've got another thing coming, and that is unlikely to happen. Keir Starmer, meanwhile, is going to be giving a speech today, yet another speech. This time it's on AI. He's going to claim that there's going to be £470 billion worth of business coming to this country because of artificial intelligence. Well, artificial intelligence should be his speciality because he's not more... I can't think of anyone even more artificial than Keir Starmer. He's the artificial Prime Minister. Nobody knows what he's going to be saying. He won't understand it either. We're also going to be talking about all sorts of things, including Meghan Markle. Meghan and Harry turned up at the scene of some of the most horrific fires in the history of California, right? And they've just been accused of being disaster tourists by Justine Bateman, who's an actress in Hollywood. So once again, they're pretty unpopular. She's cancelled the release of her new documentary series, Love, Meghan. So thank God for that. But this is Morning Glory. We've got plenty to do. Let's get it on right now. I don't know where to start, really. I haven't even mentioned the people waiting 12 hours on trolleys. I think 500,000 people have been waiting in A&Es over the course of the last few days on trolleys, waiting to be seen. Tom, very good morning to you. Difficult to know where to start. I think Rachel Reeves is still in China. I mean, I was hoping she was going to go to China, as I mentioned this last week, to ruin their economy before she came back. I don't think she's managed to do that. But there's been a lot going on over the last few days. She's come back with this deal of something like 600 million quid. But I'm told that lots of other countries, and I think this was on Trevor Phillips' show on Sky at the weekend, lots of other countries have got much more money and much bigger sort of, you know, deals trade-wise with China, and that China has kind of, you know, snubbed Rachel Reeves and just kind of made fun of her.
And that's certainly one of the stories coming out. Also, she's almost damned if she does, damned if she doesn't at this point, as far as she's gone to China to unlock all of this investment. And yet at the same time, she's getting all of this criticism, even from within her own party, for what the small print might be. The skids are definitely under her, aren't they? Sort of thing. Oh, absolutely. And it's one of those things where, as with this government and the way in which any goodwill towards it, any faith that it might be slightly competent, unravelled very quickly, that's unravelling particularly quickly for Rachel Reeves at this point. You can't help but feel that it's a question of when, not if, she's moved on.
And it's more or less you know, that's the signal very much coming out from the newspapers this morning. It's not a question of whether she remains as Chancellor, it's a question of when she gets the heave-ho. Some people think as early as March, because she's going to be making some kind of statement in March, which supposedly will, you know, settle the nerves of the markets. But the markets are all over the place, and the markets are still very jumpy, and we're now paying billions and billions of pounds extra in interest rate payments for all this borrowing that we're doing.
Absolutely, and if it does happen that she is moved on, steps down, etc., that would be a really tremendous moment. I mean, that's an obvious point in general terms. You know, this is the Chancellor, this is an incredibly significant figure, but also how important she was to the whole Starmer project so far, if we can even call it that. The way he would kind of almost give her a fair amount of free rein in terms of setting the policy, whether this would be something really significant if it did unravel as much as it seems like it's going to.
Absolutely. Let's have a look at what Trevor Phillips actually said to Peter Kyle. He's, of course, the Secretary of State for Science and Technology, rather laughably, and he was asked about this £600 million deal with China.
When the Chancellor says we wipe the slate clean, we're not coming back for any more tax rises, is that still true?
Well, when the Chancellor speaks, she speaks for government, and my job is to make sure that I put her words into action. So I'm keeping a tight grip on my own department so that we don't have to come back with the additional pressures.
To be in response to ineptitude and mistakes so far, which is a much tougher sell when you've got people who were elected on a particular manifesto, making particular promises, wanting to deliver in their respective departments, now being told this because of the fact that things have been so badly mishandled. It's really going to store revolt inside the government.
It will, because also all of these difficult decisions that they say they've already made are supposed to be fixing the economy, but none of them are working. And in fact, quite the reverse. They've decided to drag the economy down. And over the weekend, I saw various different Tory ministers coming on. I think Mel Stride was doing a lot of it, pointing out quite rightly, and you know, I hold no card for the Tory party, but quite rightly pointing out that in June the economy in this country was going pretty well. You know, inflation was down, unemployment was down, employment was up, and you know, the growth was actually happening. It was beginning to happen anyway. Whereas now the whole economy is completely and utterly down the gurgler, isn't it?
I mean, I suppose in a way it demonstrates how fragile that reasonably good economic outlook might have been, because of the fact that we've got these kind of fundamental problems with the British economy. Every Chancellor comes in, says they're going to deal with it. The issue with productivity, the issue with growth, the fact that that's been anemic for so long now. But it seems like we go from one crisis to another because of the fact that they can't really properly deal with it. And Rachel Reeves is one in a long line of Chancellors, I think it's fair to say, who have failed spectacularly to deal with those problems.
But she is a woman, though, so that's the most important thing.
So we should all feel very inspired.
When Keir Starmer said it was going to be quite a moment when she was brought in. But now she apparently is feeling depressed, and she doesn't know what to do, which I suppose is not what you'd expect to be after 7 months in a new job. I mean, they walked into office, and I know people are going to start saying this is what you say every day, but it has to be said. You know, they came into office full of the joys of spring, full of optimism, full of what they called a fully costed, fully ready to go organised policy, a plan they said they had, and it's all unravelled because they obviously didn't have a plan.
No, absolutely. And the sense that they're like the dog that caught the car, like we were desperate to get back into government. It's so important that we get rid of those terrible Tories. They're there. They're now there, and they have no idea what they're doing. And I think that's become abundantly clear, not just with Rachel Reeves, but with the rest of the government.
And as with everything else that's piling in on, I mean, if she's depressed, I wonder how Keir Starmer feels, because, I mean, he literally, every time he turns around, there's yet another scandal. You know, we've got the scandal of Tulip Sadiq, which was made worse by the Sunday Times story on Sunday, in which it was revealed that there seems to have been an awful lot of toing and froing between Tulip Sadiq and the Bangladeshi government, which has now been ousted for being corrupt. And over the weekend, they basically found inside the guarded luxury home of Sheikh Hasina in Dhaka all sorts of things, including luxury goods by Chanel and Swarovski, an inventory of jewellery, ceramics and clothes that were gifts from foreign dignitaries. But they also found some flyers for Philippe Sadiq's election campaign in North London.
Oh, it's incredible.
Which would suggest to me that she'd been there quite a lot.
It's going to be a really difficult week for Tulip Sadiq, definitely. I mean, the fact that she is the anti-corruption lead in government and yet is being accused of corruption from the new Bangladeshi authorities. And also, there's just a bad smell around it. You know, whether or not she strenuously denies that she in any way benefited from this nuclear deal that her aunt, the ousted Sheikh Hasina, was involved in with Russia. Even just the fact that she has lived, I believe it's in either 3 or 4 properties in London, which were essentially gifted to her by party functionaries from her aunt's political party, or just donors in and around that particular part of Bangladeshi politics. It just looks really bad, and it's something which will also raise questions of Keir Starmer, because of the fact that her Tulip Sadiq's association, shall we say, have been known about for a very long time.
Right.
He just happens to be quite close friends with her. They're in almost neighbouring constituencies.
Well, some people say that she's his best friend in politics, and if he has to get rid of her, you know, that's going to be difficult for him, painful for the two of them, and pretty embarrassing for Labour, isn't it?
And it will raise questions again about his terrible judgment, which he's shown time and time again. It's not as if she's banged to rights about anything. She strenuously denies anything too unseemly, but again, it just raises questions about why did he put her in this position, particularly because it's a headline writer's dream, the anti-corruption lead being accused of corruption and because of her connections with her aunt.
Yeah, absolutely right. So in the first 6 months of his tenure, basically, he's already lost the Transport Secretary, Louise Hager, it turned out was a convicted fraudster. He's probably going to lose his Chancellor, and he's probably going to have to lose Tulip Sadiq, the Anti-Corruption Minister, rather laughably appointed, you know, who seems to be being accused of corruption in another country.
It's really not great, is it? I mean, if you suggested that things would really start to crumble this quickly, even I might have been slightly surprised.
I know. You wouldn't have believed it.
You
if
I
said this to you in August, you know, this is how it's going to play out, you'd have gone, ridiculous.
Wishful thinking, Mike. But it's that combination of ineptitude and just unpopularity. It's proven lethal for them, definitely.
And just to make things even worse, there was an arrest, and I think we can say, he's only been charged in this case yet, Ivor Kaplan, former Labour MP. And the only reason this is important, I mean, he's been arrested for a pretty hideous alleged crime against a minor. But the fact is that many senior Labour MPs, until relatively recently, were still in touch with this guy. We're still following him on Twitter, and there's lots of deleted tweets being deleted over the course of the last few days. And his connections to what is clearly still a fairly major role in the Labour Party, even though he's no longer an MP, is more embarrassment.
No, absolutely. And whilst this is, as you say, an ongoing investigation, it's an alleged crime at this point, what is being alleged is incredibly serious, amongst the most serious crimes anyone could be accused of. And again, it's something which is going to, for right or wrong, dog the Labour Party in a week in which there are plenty of other things, bad headlines they're having to deal with. Yeah,
absolutely right. Let's just remind ourselves of what Keir Starmer said back in July.
We've prepared this party for government. We've prepared all of our departments for government. If we are privileged to come in to serve our country, it will be public service for me, as it always has been, not self-entitlement.
That was before we discovered the free clothes from Lord Ali, the free apartments supplied by Lord Ali, the free trips supplied by Lord Ali, and the free concert tickets supplied by God knows who, for Taylor Swift, football, cricket, rugby, you name it, you know, they got freebies.
It's incredible looking back.
Government of service.
We didn't. Maybe that's why his supposed plan for government was so threadbare. It was just out all the time. It was at the cricket, it was at the football, it was at Taylor Swift. He just didn't have enough time.
But I mean,
he
gives the impression there of being this man entirely kind of on top of his game, on top of his brief, absolutely not to be messed with, completely straight down the line. Lawyer, wouldn't ever, deviate from it's the right thing to do. It's all rubbish, isn't it? It's all like a paper kind of, mask, which is now basically crumpled in front of him.
No, absolutely. And the two things that the Labour Party had to sort of hang on at the last election was the sense that we're much more competent with this government in waiting. The Tories have proved themselves to be inept as much as anything else. That's all shattered now. And also this kind of phony moral authority that the Tories are just bad people.
Yeah, we're invested in them.
Nice, kind people who are only really in it for public service.
Yes.
The Lord Ali thing and everything else has completely obliterated that.
We're
now.
the
So
grown-ups.
what are they left with? Like this,
well, they're
this
literally
terrible...
left with nothing.
economic outlook and, you know, a series of scandals.
I mean, they've now got... We're going to talk about this coming up in the next section, because Keir Starmer, not content with being made a laughing stock of Britain and the rest of the world, is now going to make a speech about artificial intelligence. Now, I mean, there are plenty of people who I would nominate to make that speech. He's not one of them. Because he's such an artificial individual, that those are all the things that anybody's going to be thinking about. And as it speaks like artificial intelligence, everybody's going to go, well, he sound like a robot. You know, the three words, apparently, most associated with AI by the public are robot, scary and worried, all of which really do describe the Prime Minister, don't they? He's worried, we're scared, and he's a robot. The
Absolutely.
end.
There we go.
We'll talk some more about that because apparently people in this country, never mind AI, never mind computerised world at which you live, most people can't even work their own washing machines. This is Talk.
Look, they spy on us, we spy on them. I'm sure that's the case. But certainly, this is not just a catch-all. And I mean, I imagine, I suppose, I don't know what your thoughts are, but some people are certainly happy that these discussions about investment have continued or have started up again after about 5 years when they haven't happened. Other people say, hold on a second, China created, in many people's view, the COVID in a lab, so there's plenty of evidence for that, so they should be paying us reparations. I mean, we have a very complicated relationship.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 21 minutes past 6. I'm Mike Gray with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Tom Slater is here with us. Let's get a voice note from James on Winter Fuel.
Good morning, Mike. James here. Now, I went round my nan and granddad's over the weekend, and it was obviously very, very cold. And I got in there, and they can't even afford to put their heating on, Mike. Can you believe it? They're old age pensioners. They've worked all their lives, and that's how they get treated. I tell you what, Mike, this Labour Party, they certainly don't like the older generation, do they? Should be bloody ashamed of themselves.
They really should be ashamed of themselves. They're full of the joys of spring about AI. They're full of the joys of spring about giving money to train drivers, giving money to public sector workers. They're now going to take money away from them, they say. But, of course, that won't really happen. But it's all doom and gloom for Keir Starmer. It's all gone horribly wrong. He's making a speech on AI in a little while. But let's have a look at something that made me laugh over the weekend. Lee Anderson, Reform Party MP, of course, was appearing at another Reform conference that happened on Saturday, I think it was. Have a look at this.
Look who we've got running the country. Free Gear Kia. Rachel from Accounts. You know that one, don't you? We've got that famous no-brainer, Angela Rayner. Mad Miliband, the net zero fanatic. And let's not forget our very own mastermind, David Lammy. It's not meant to be funny, this, isn't it, you know? He's a proper charmer, isn't he? Like, listen, I hope nobody's filming this. But keep this one to yourselves. We've got over 6,000 villages in the United Kingdom. And if you took the village idiot from every village, right, and put them 6,000 village idiots into Tottenham, David Lammy would still be the village idiot.
I mean, it's an old one, but it's a good one. And, I mean, that's why people like Reform, because they talk the language of ordinary people. You know, that's the sort of thing people say in pubs. It's the kind of conversation. And there'll be people going... Of course, I put it out on Twitter at the weekend, and, of course, the lefties are all like, oh, typical, a racist remark that you're retweeting. And he goes, how is it racist? He's having to go at 5 members of the Cabinet, one of whom happens to be black. How is that in any way racist? No. He's making fun of 5 different people. 4 of them are white.
Absolutely. And, you know, stand-up career beckons for the
Very much so. He's got some great timing there.
Really good delivery.
Especially when he goes, this is not meant to be funny, by the way.
But haven't they made it easy for them? I mean, I remember...
Well, they have.
I really...
It's so pompous as well.
I also really thought that when they finally got a sniff of government, they would think, you know what, we're going to have to move David Lammy. You know what, we're going to have to put Miliband back in his box. This just isn't going to work. These are people who are genuinely already punchlines in this country, and yet the fact that he's carried on with them is incredible. And it will endless material for Lee Anderson and everyone else.
Absolutely right. Now, let me ask you about AI, because I don't know if you can explain this story to me, but I've read it in several different newspapers, most amusingly in The Guardian, right? Their headline on the front page is, From Schools to Potholes, Huge Expansion of AI in the Public Sector. OK. It says artificial intelligence will be used for everything from spotting potholes to freeing up teachers to teach under a big expansion of the technology in the public sector to be revealed today. Now, when I was training to be a journalist, they said the most important thing about the introduction to a story is that you tell people what's happening, you tell them when it's happening, you tell them where it's happening, you tell them why it's happening. That doesn't tell me anything. Keir Starmer will launch the sweeping plan to increase 20-fold the amount of artificial intelligence computing power under public control over the next 5 years. Sorry, any more? Any more help? Labour's plan to unleash AI, mainlining it into the veins of the nation.
There we go.
Not the greatest allegory. Includes a personal pledge from the Prime Minister to make Britain the world leader in a sector that has been transformed by a series of significant breakthroughs in the last 3 years.
What is this actually? What is this actually going to
Still
turn
any
into?
clue? The plan includes a potentially controversial scheme to unlock public data to help fuel the growth of AI businesses. Anything?
I don't think he knows, though, does he?
The guy that's written this, Robert Booth, the technologist, he doesn't even know what he's talking about. Ministers believe AI can help tackle Britain's anemic economic growth and deliver, according to its own forecasts, an economic boost rising to up to £470 billion over the next decade. Well, how? With what means? You know, doing what? With, you know, it's an action plan. I mean, it might as well be written by the government. Ministers believe AI can help tackle Britain's anemic economic growth. By doing what?
Do we really think Keir Starmer knows that?
I mean, it's just rubbish, isn't it? I'm not even going to tear it up anymore. I'm just going to chuck it away.
Well, it's that classic thing, isn't it, which politicians get really attached to the idea there's going to be some sort of technological explosion of innovation which will solve all of their problems without them having to do anything. Yeah. And I think he's falling victim to that.
And I think, well, the trouble is, these people have been in politics all their lives, right? So they actually think that that kind of statement means something, right?
And if they say it will happen.
Yeah, but look at what we're going to do. And you go, well, what are you going to do? And they can't tell you. Yeah, well, we're going to create £470 billion worth of goods and services. Are you? Wow. But my worry about all of this AI, right, is the story in the Mail, which I think puts paid to all of it, it basically suggests that 4 out of 10 people in this country always stick to the same washing settings on the washing machine because you're scared of using the wrong one. Basically, people are baffled by the technology they've got in their house at the moment. Now, I don't know if you're one of these people. Struggles of millions of technologically challenged Britons we have with our home appliances have been laid bare in a poll. 2,000 adult survey. 28% consider the washing machine the most confusing piece of household tech. 47% using the same programme every time. Quick wash is the most popular setting. That's what I do. You do a quick wash and dry, right? It takes about 35 minutes. That's the only one I use. I don't like to use the others.
And, you know, worst case, you could use your AI to explain it to you.
Well, you could. This
According
is
to Keir Starmer, it will solve all of your problems.
Apparently, you won't need to have a washing machine because AI will do it all for you.
What does that somehow.
Yeah.
And it will sort the potholes out as well. When it's not filling potholes, it's doing your laundry.
Yeah.
Now, so.
Is it a robot? You know, is it just something that you imagine? Is it something? 77% hardly ever put their wash on eco mode. Why would you?
On principle, you can't touch it.
No, because 56% find the length of time it runs for off-putting. On top of that, 21% do not know if their machine even has this setting. Because you can't read it. I mean, I've got a problem, and even a descaling program on a coffee machine is seen as the most complex to understand on the gadget. I don't even have a coffee machine. Have you got a coffee machine?
I do, actually, and I never...
Have you descaled it?
It flashes, it tells me that I should, and I still...
That's the other thing with washing machines. They used to be, there used to be a little kind of a thing, a drawer that you pulled out and you had to empty.
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore, and I'm not sure if that's a problem because I don't know if I've got a washing machine now that you don't have to do it with.
Yeah, I haven't used that drawer. I haven't even.
The drawer.
It fills me with dread even thinking about opening that.
Yeah. Air fryers, tumble dryers, dishwashers also confuse people. I've got my family have got an air fryer. I've never used it. A bit frightened of it.
I feel like we need. This is where Keir Starmer's plans for a technological boom can help. You know, they can explain all of your household appliances.
This is where it's all going to go wrong. Well, he'll probably say if you ask him, "Oh yeah, you just program it all on AI."
Yeah.
And then also, don't you lose, like, if you get loads of AI to do things, doesn't that mean people will lose their jobs?
Well, that's the fear, isn't it? But whose job's being lost here? The person who would otherwise explain to you what the eco mode was. You know, that's a job that we could do without, probably.
Isn't that usually the guy in Curry's that sells it to you? And he tells you everything in about the first 5 minutes you're standing there and you've completely forgotten it as soon as you walk out the place. The other thing I've got is a freezer problem, right? Well, how do you defrost a freezer now? Because I've got a freezer, it doesn't seem to have any buttons. There's nothing to say that, here's a button you press for defrost.
Just do a hard defrost and unplug it?
I don't even know where it's plugged in. No, because everything's behind walls and, I don't know, I had the place redone, it was all rewired, I've no idea where the plug is.
Well, if anyone can help Mike out, they should call in voice notes.
I mean, my producer Christian suggested I take a hairdryer to it. But I'm pretty sure that's not the most technologically advanced method. But the top drawer, I can barely open the top drawer. It's one of those, it's a small one. It's got 3 drawers. The top drawer's stuck, by and large. So, anyway, that's my revolution for AI. If anyone else can help me with what AI actually is and how we're going to make £470 billion, I'd be very, very grateful for an explanation. Let's get a voice note from Chris.
Morning, Michael. Chris from London. Regarding Rachel from accounts, how is she going to get anybody to make a decision when 90% of them are still working from home and threatening to strike if they're made to go to the office? I think I know where the first cuts would be.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. I think we've got that clip now. Have we got that clip? This is Peter Kyle talking to Trevor Phillips about all of this.
She's coming back, she says, with £600 million worth of investment over the next 5 years, and that's something that she's very proud of. But let's put that in context. In 1 year, 2023, Indonesia landed 60 times as much Chinese investment, 7 billion. Hungary, 40 times as much as us. Peru, 30 times as much as that 600 million. It's not much to write home about, is it?
It's a start.
It's a start. Thanks, guys. Yeah, so Peru, they give Peru more money and everybody else there on that list. But it's a start. That's great, isn't it? They've been in power for 7 months. Rachel Reeves goes to China, comes back with less than they gave Peru. It's a start, isn't it? Yeah, it's the start of the end of her career, I think. 6:31. is under a kind of pall of smoke, even the bits that aren't actually on fire, and it's still going, isn't it?
That's right. Unfortunately, the fires are still burning. Two major fires to talk about. There are more than two, but quite frankly, the devastation everyone has seen is from two fires. The Palisades fire, which is right along the Pacific Ocean in the hills above Los Angeles, near the Malibu area, and then the Eaton fire, which is burning in the town of Altadena, which is on the other side of Los Angeles County, probably 20, 25 miles away on the inland part of Los Angeles County, underneath the tall mountains there. These fires aren't connected directly, but they are both being fueled by what we call the Santa Ana winds, this seasonal wind event, which, to cut it short, is basically caused by having the ocean on one side of California and the desert on the other, and tall valleys and mountains in between, which just funnels this viciously warm desert air through the area at winds of up to 80 miles per hour. And unfortunately, you have one spark or two sparks on other parts of the county, you get these fires, which are now just unprecedented in terms of their size and ferocity. We're talking about 12,000 structures now burned in some capacity. These are houses or cars or, sheds, structures of various types that are either completely destroyed or at least damaged.
Yeah, and someone was telling me that the damaged area is about approximately the size of Manhattan.
Yeah, well, I looked at it a few days ago. Interestingly enough, I did a similar comparison. Just the Palisades fire alone is about the size of Staten Island, which is sort of a less famous, less glamorous part of New York City. Right. Not as big as Manhattan. But I suppose when you add these two fires up, it's probably approaching the size of Manhattan. Right now, we're looking at about 40,000 acres in size, which is just tremendous. I mean, when you're seeing these aerial videos, you're only seeing either just the Palisades fire or just the Eaton fire. You have to combine the two to get a full scale of the devastation.
And where is everybody? Because obviously the 12,000 houses have been destroyed there. Where have they all gone?
Well, some are with family. I know 4 of them myself. I have some friends in Altadena. They lost their house. The husband and wife and their 2 young girls are fortunately staying with the relatives who live in Bel Air, which is a lovely posh area, which also had to be evacuated 2 nights ago. Thankfully, it didn't burn down. So some families are staying with family members or friends. Many other people don't have that luxury. They're staying in hotels or motels. They're sleeping in their cars. They're staying at emergency shelters that the government and charities have established. But we're talking about 100,000 people plus who are currently evacuated. Now, some of those people, the majority, will be able to go back to homes. They're just still in an evacuation state because the fires are burning. But many of them, 30,000, maybe more, won't have homes to go back to. Los Angeles is already a region that doesn't have enough housing, which is part of the reason housing is so expensive here. And so there's going to be a crisis. They're going to need to build either some temporary housing or find temporary accommodations. The comparison that's being made is to Hurricane Katrina from New Orleans more than 15 years ago, where tens of thousands of people were displaced, some of them for many years. It's going to take a decade to get Los Angeles built back, because we're not just talking homes, we're talking sewage systems, water systems. It's a devastating fire that only affects 2 little chunks of Los Angeles, but it affects the entire psyche of the city. We're hosting part of the World Cup next year, literally in 12 months. We're hosting the Olympics in 3.5 years. So this will be a Herculean effort. I think we're up to the task, but it's going to be difficult.
It is. And you heard there from Fire Chief Kristen Crowley on the budget cuts and how they affected their ability to respond. Let's have a look at Mel Gibson, who's been talking about Gavin Newsom, the governor.
Mel, any message from you to Governor Newsom or Karen Bass tonight?
Spend less on hair gel. That's it. Yeah. What can I say to them? Not big admirer of either, but there you go.
I mean, Gavin Newsom has taken an awful lot of criticism, as has the mayor, for not really being, one, there, but also not really being able to respond to people's questions about what they can do for people.
Yeah, I think the mayor is probably taking more heat than the governor. The governor has more experience in this, going back over the last 6 years or so, dealing with some major wildfires. One thing to note, and this is kind of a detailed policy area, but it's very, I think, worth noting. The $17 million budget shortfall that Chief Crowley talked about has to do with the budget that was passed about 8 months ago, which did not include a negotiated pay raise for the firefighters union. Once that negotiated pay raise was agreed to, that $17 million budget deficit or decrease actually evaporates and becomes a larger budget. But the point stands that the chief believes that had she had more money, she would have had more resources and the better ability to fight the fire. I should add one more thing. That only refers to the Palisades fire. The Palisades fire is in the city of Los Angeles, which is Chief Crowley's terrain, Mayor Bass's terrain. The Eaton fire, which is equally as devastating over in Altadena, is under the jurisdiction of Los Angeles County and the County of Los Angeles Fire Department. So two different jurisdictions. It's just a bit of housekeeping I want people to keep in mind. When you hear about the city of Los Angeles, that's the Palisades fire. When you hear about Los Angeles County and the city of Altadena, it's a slightly different jurisdictional issue.
Yeah. Just on something off to the side as well, Kevin, Donald Trump is going to be inaugurated next week, and people were quite shocked, weren't they, last week when he said that he might want to take back Greenland. But apparently Greenland now, the leaders of it, are saying they'll enter negotiations with Donald Trump, which has taken everybody slightly by surprise.
Yeah. Essentially, the Prime Minister of Greenland, to remind everyone, Greenland's a territory of Denmark, he said, listen, I'll meet with Trump. That's it. I'll talk to him. We'll go into it with an open mind. And the people of Greenland are largely saying the same thing, like, we'll talk, sure. Some of them in Greenland, some of the elders of the indigenous people are also mocking Trump, saying they don't take this seriously. But one of the things to know about Greenland is that the people who live there many of them at least would like to be independent.
Yeah.
So not part of America done because Greenland is a territory that depends on assistance from the continents.
Yes.
But
yeah, no, I think there's always been a movement where they don't particularly want to be part of Denmark either. And I mean, Denmark have no more right to it, really, in a way, if you think about the way the geography of the place is, than the United States of America. Maybe they'll just end up with a couple of golf courses that Trump puts in. I think we've lost Kevin there. It seems to have frozen in time. The good news, I suppose, for the people of Altadena, which I think is where they went, and for Los Angeles in general, is that Harry and Meghan made a little visit down there yesterday, and they've been accused of being disaster tourists by a woman who used to be on Family Ties, that show that Michael J. Fox was in, Justine Bateman. I mean, they managed to get themselves into these situations. Remember, she went to the shooting in Texas and was roundly criticised because they all seem to get captured on film wherever they go.
No, absolutely. And when they were, reportedly opening their house to people who were displaced by the fire and so on, you just, I don't want to sound overly cynical, but that was probably press released out.
Yeah.
You know that actually someone, a PR, thought, let's make sure that people find out about this. They can say that all of this is out the goodness of their heart as much as possible. Why is there always a camera crew in tow? Why do we always find out about these things almost instantly?
Yeah.
I don't think they even realise they're doing it a lot of the time. They really seem to, think that this is only ever going to be taken in the most generous of fashions.
And an awful lot of people on social media, which of course is not the only place that you can get your news, but I mean, an awful lot of people on social media going, they're not the royal family, they're not particularly, Hollywood stars. What are they doing? Why do they feel the need to go and sort of hug people all over the place and say, we feel your pain? Nobody's asked them to do it.
Haven't these people suffered enough?
But the only thing that we can say that we have at least got some good news out of it is that it's delayed the launch of Love Meghan, which is the new Netflix series that she's doing, which is all about how wonderful the lifestyle of their home gardens is. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. But apparently they thought that it would be in bad taste to launch it during the fire recovery period. I suspect she's worried that if they did launch it, nobody would take any notice because there's a big fire going on. You know?
It'd almost also be a bad taste to launch it at any point. Why they've got this Netflix deal when they don't seem to have any ideas as to what they should produce other than talking about themselves and trying to quote-unquote set the record straight with the royal family.
Yeah.
Like, what were they going to produce? The fact that it's come down to this, at least it's, like you say, a bit of a welcome pause on the rollout of their media.
Exactly. And just to go back to one more story from America while we're on it, on the working from home thing, JP Morgan Chase, one of the big Wall Street banks, actually issued an email last week, back end of last week, summoning all staff back to the office 5 days a week, becoming the latest corporate giant to call time on the whole era of remote and hybrid working. 316,000 employees worldwide told on Friday that as of, I think, March, basically they want everyone back in the office 5 days a week. No exceptions.
I dare say we're going to see more of that in the months and years ahead. I think there's a kind of correction going on in a lot of workplaces to a sort of sense that we embrace a lot of these policies even though they're not necessarily particularly good for productivity. And oftentimes not very good for staff either, particularly if we think about younger recruits coming through and so on. So like this, similar with the DEI situation and others, I think the weather is changing.
It is.
And,
well, I said earlier it's the year of common sense. You know, Donald Trump's going to become the new president in about a week's time, and things are starting to move. You know, things are actually starting, it seems to me, to be taken a bit more seriously. But we'll come back with more. We'll talk about some younger people's views coming up next, because apparently a lot of them aren't that keen on elections, believe it or not. It's 6:47. This is Morning Glory.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. It's 6:51 and we are here, of course, all the way through until 10 o'clock. 4 glorious hours of Morning Glory. Tom Slater's here with me from Spikes Online. Got a couple of A&E related stories. One horrible story, front page of the Mirror, stab horror in A&E. A nurse stabbed during a shift at a busy casualty unit at the Royal Oldham Hospital yesterday. A 37-year-old man has been arrested, but absolutely horrific. If you're now, getting nurses stabbed in an A&E, I mean, we know there's been a knife crime problem in this country for quite some time. But for it to start hitting hospitals, I mean, what are they going to do? They're going to end up having armed guards on hospital A&E rooms, aren't they?
No, absolutely. Completely horrendous. The idea that that should even be a conversation, that when you've got hard-stretched nurses going to work, that they should be in any way fearing for their safety. But no, it's a damning indictment where we're at in terms of a lot of this violent crime at the moment, which seems out of control in a lot of places.
Absolutely right. And I mean, it's almost like every day there's some kind of tragedy, isn't there? Let's get a quick voice note from Jay on Mel Gibson.
Hi guys, fantastic show as always, Mikey. I just want to say, I've listened to Mel Gibson now on and off for the last sort of 2 or 3 years. I think the guy should be the governor. Get him in as the governor of that area. LA needs someone strong like him, someone with strong beliefs about protecting children from paedophile rings, someone who's, straight talking, down the line, and sees common sense. If you actually look at a lot of what he stands for, he's just a normal, everyday guy. He's not a flash Harry who walks around with his Hollywood millions, giving it the large one. He's just a normal guy that believes in fairness for all.
And I think he's one of those who's actually lost his house as well in that Palisades fire. Going back to hospitals, front page of the Daily Mail, £500 million in 12-hour A&E trolley hell. Figures for 2024 say hospitals left a record 518,000 patients languishing on trolleys for 12 hours or more in A&E departments. I mean, that's a shocking statistic, isn't it?
Absolutely. And the fact that we've seen so many emergency departments overwhelmed even before the kind of recent upsurge in flu cases, which always leads to a hell of a lot of pressures on hospitals. People have just got used to kind of permanent crisis in the NHS at the moment. It's not just this government, of course, it's the last government. It's decades of failure, really.
It really is.
But we've just become accustomed to this, as if this is just, unfortunately, what we have to put up with. But as the longer this goes on, I think the more people won't want to put up with it anymore.
No. Well, this is the thing. I mean, people don't really have much choice, though, because, I mean, if you've got something that you can have sorted out in a different way, or you can have an operation or procedure of some kind, or a scan done sort of, privately, you can do it. But A&E is the sort of place where people go because they haven't got anywhere else to go, because they have to go to an A&E because they've had an accident. And there's not really much you can do about that, is there?
Absolutely. I think there's been this kind of sense for a long time now that people think because the NHS is such a sort of wonderful social achievement and so on, that we should just put up with it being dreadful all of the time, like almost because of the beneficence of the institution, that therefore we should be happy with it. You look at the outcomes in general, but especially when people think, when I'm really in trouble, when there is an emergency, when I do need to access care quickly, the fact that people almost, as much as they might be hurting from the injury, almost dread what they'll face when they actually get into hospital in terms of how long it might be just for them to get rudimentary treatment.
Yeah.
We can't carry on like this.
We really can't. And, of course, Wes Streeting every single week, more or less, says he's ashamed. I mean, I think last week he said he was ashamed when he found out that some people are waiting 50 hours in A&E to actually see anyone at all. No, which is extraordinary. 2 days plus. No,
and again, it's the extent to which this has just become normal. Is the thing that I think it just isn't going to stick anymore. We just need a much broader, proper debate about how we sort out this health service, make it fit for the 21st century. But constantly it's just completely clouded by a silly pantomime of one side accusing the other of trying to privatise it, and all the while patients continue to suffer as a consequence.
And back to our AI story, of course. I mean, one of the things that they say is going to benefit massively from AI is the NHS. Again, I'd like to see exactly what they mean by that, and exactly how it's going to be improved, because they keep saying, well, one of the things that we can do is we can rush through the appointment system, we can make sure that people can get appointments easier. Well, only if you've got the people that can actually see them, and only if you've got enough doctors, and if you've got enough nurses, and if you've got enough, bandwidth in the hospitals, because if you haven't got that, it doesn't matter who's arranging the appointment, does it?
No, and the NHS is struggling to do the fundamentals properly, and obviously I'm all for innovation. I'm all for investment, making sure that you've got a health service that actually has the tools that it needs. The fact that the NHS is still so reliant, forget artificial intelligence on fax machines in order to function. It's insane.
It is.
And it's slowing down the system. But
and
at the same
paper
time,
records as well.
It's incredible. And yet, but there's so much that needs to be sorted out with it. You know, whether or not that. Again, I think there's just this belief that there will be some kind of technologies which some social media, Silicon Valley rather, whiz will come up with that will just solve all of our problems without us having to do the hard work of, you know, trying to reform an institution like this.
Absolutely right. One story that really did quite take me aback this morning was on the front page of The Guardian. I haven't got it in front of me because I threw it away. But 1/5 of the young people in this country, Generation Z, or Gen Z as they like to be called, the millennials, would be quite happy with a leader who ran the country in a strong-mannered way without ever having to have another election. What's that all about?
For all the talk about the younger generation being so much more liberal, progressive, enlightened, apparently they're all desperate for an autocrat, or at least 1/5 of them are. So, and what's interesting is that the poll suggests that it's the younger generation which are disproportionately more likely to back this. It's like 14% of the population, generally 21% of this particular age group.
It's quite a lot, isn't it?
It is alarming. I mean, it is a minority, of course. The rest of them, I'm sure, are perfectly happy with the system of democracy that we have. But it does speak, I think, to an alarming sort of authoritarianism that can flare up at the edges when you have the complete failure of government to be able to do anything.
Yes.
Positive, negative, in between.
And this is also that kind of that generation of people who think that, you know, they all think the same way. Anyone who doesn't think that way is some kind of thought criminal. So therefore they shouldn't be paid attention to, and they should be put over there in a corner and banned from ever talking to anyone. And so they don't need elections because everybody's on the same page.
No, absolutely. I think that, and also a generation who've been told that, you know, Brexit was a disaster, that you know, democracy has failed because the voters didn't do what David Cameron told them to do. All of this has an effect.
And it may feed in as well to the fact that the turnout in elections now is pretty low, you know. And in fact, we heard over the weekend, didn't we, that the elections, it's still not clear to me exactly what's going on, but the elections in May are still now kind of at least half going to be cancelled, if not completely cancelled.
No, and that remains up in the air. But as you say, a lot of people are also just sort of checking out of the democratic process. That's not to say that they're against the system of democracy per se, but there's a kind of sense that the parties on offer are not offering any real choice, certainly not particularly compelling. Certainly people don't believe that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. So that's always going to be corrosive to people's faith in the whole project.
Yeah, exactly. You know? And one final one, the BBC, lots of conversations from Lisa Nandy over the weekend about possibilities of taking away the licence fee and making the BBC funded by general taxation, which is probably a worse idea. But a story in the Mail today saying it doesn't come cheap to look good on BBC News. They've got £1 million in their budget for the makeup department, just for BBC News. £1 million. I mean, we have makeup here. It doesn't cost anything like that, mind you. I mean, as you can see, perhaps they don't do such a good job.
No, it's incredible, isn't it? I mean, there's an organisation that big, there's always going to be, like, waste on an absurd scale. But when people see the BBC making the case for itself...
£1 million on makeup, I'm sorry.
This is especially just for BBC News.
I mean, they make up the stories, never mind, you know, they're making up the makeup.
And then people see that, and then they see the BBC engaging in the kind of special pleading it always has to around the time of this sort of chart renewal and so on. People struggle to have as much sympathy for it when they see waste on that scale.
They really do. Absolutely right. Tom, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Tom Slater there with all the big stories coming at you in the papers this morning. We've got loads more to do, and there's plenty more happening. Tom Hunt, former Conservative MP, is coming up. We'll take your voice notes, of course, 0344 499 1000. You can send us a text as well to 87222. Tweet us at talkTV. This is Morning Glory. Back after the news.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 2 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham. 1 hour already underway. We started at 6 o'clock and we've got 4 glorious hours of Morning Glory for you. Now we've only got 3. But don't worry, we've got plenty of time to get stuck into all sorts of things that are going on, including, in about 20 minutes' time, Jeff Bezos, who used to be the world's richest man. He's the guy that runs Amazon, of course. He and Elon Musk used to sort of vie for who was going to be the most rich person in the entire world. Jeff Bezos is getting into the rocket launching game. In about 20 minutes' time, Blue Origin is going to launch the New Glenn rocket for the first time from Cape Canaveral. You're looking at it right there. We'll see whether it's as successful as some of the stuff that Elon Musk has got on. But it's basically a great big new sort of willy-waving exercise now, isn't it? My rocket's bigger than yours. How far does it go? Ooh, it goes all the way to Mars, my one. Does it? Oh, I've got one that's going to Pluto. Have you? OK, that's good. How much money you got now? Well, I would have been the richest man in the world, but I had to give half of it away to my ex-wife. Never mind. There you go. Coming up, though, Tom Hunt is here. We're going to be talking to him about the state of play. Keir Starmer more unpopular than ever this morning. And, of course, Rachel Reeves over in China getting a deal with the Chinese, which is worse than the deal they gave to Indonesia, worse than the deal they gave to Hungary, worse than the deal they gave to Peru. So she's come back slightly with her tail between her legs. She's apparently said to be depressed. She's now going to launch herself at various government departments, saying that they're going to have to make ruthless cuts in order to sort of safeguard the budget because she's made such a dog's breakfast of it. Meanwhile, Labour, according to the Times this morning, and their net zero push are handing more power to Beijing because basically they're giving China the right to have a renewable energy infrastructure brought into this country. It's absolutely mad. It's not going well at all. But, of course, back in July, we were promised that Labour knew what they were doing. Have a listen.
We've prepared this party for government. We've prepared all of our departments for government. If we are privileged to come in to serve our country, it will be public service for me, as it always has been, not self-entitlement.
Not self-entitlement, but government of service. That was before we knew about Lord Ali, of course, and the free suits and the free glasses and the free concert tickets and the free flats and the free penthouses and the free parties. Goodness gracious me, you don't hear much about Lord Ali these days, do you? Meanwhile, we'll be talking about a great many other things, including, of course, what on earth is going on inside of our A&E departments. More than 500,000 people left on trolleys for more than 12 hours last year, and now the A&Es are under even more pressure. When is anyone going to fix that? And what on earth is Keir Starmer going to announce later on this morning when he launches himself at the AI revolution? He says that apparently, according to him, we could be something like nearly £500 billion better off because of artificial intelligence. But he can't explain it to anybody. I'm going to be asking you as well for some more tips. I've got loads here on how to defrost my freezer, and also why we don't use any other method of washing clothes in the washing machine apart from the one setting, the quick wash. Why is that? If you don't know how to do that, what's good is AI? This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Yeah, I mean, all human life is here, I think. Tom Hunt is also here. Tom, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Nice to talk to you, Tom. It's all going a bit wrong, isn't it, for Labour? I mean, we were promised there at the beginning of July by Keir Starmer, just days before they won the election, you know, it's going to be a government of service. We're going to be standing by. We've got everything fully costed. We're ready to hit the ground running. I mean, it doesn't look as if they had anything ready to go. And now Rachel Reeves' budget is unravelling at such a rate that she's now going to have to try and claw back some money from government departments, which I'm sure you will know is pretty hard to do.
It is extraordinary. I obviously wasn't happy when Labour won. I thought Keir Starmer would be found out. I thought the government would be found out. But I didn't think it would fall apart. I didn't think it would unravel quite so rapidly. But also across so many different areas. I mean, it's hard to keep up. There's been probably about over a dozen major issues so far for the Labour Party, one of which would be enough for us to talk about across this entire show. Of course, let's not forget the Tulip Sadiq affair, which was covered in many of the weekend papers. I mean, to say that's got a bit of a whiff about it would be an understatement. I mean, you don't have random people connected to foreign regimes just randomly buying people flats. It's an unusual thing. It whiffs of corruption.
And she apparently is the corruptions minister, which is rather laughable in itself, but also very, very close friend of Keir Starmer's. I mean, he's been to Bangladesh to meet her family while they were running it in a corrupt fashion, apparently. He's also hosted her auntie in Parliament when he was leader of the opposition.
Well, they found sort of tulips leaflets.
Yeah.
In the vacated palace in Dhaka. I have to say, I've actually been to that palace myself a couple of times.
Have you?
It's incredibly strange. And then, of course, we have the ongoing failure of immigration. But so, look, I mean, I think that the damage done to the Labour brand, to Keir Starmer, I don't think that they're going to be able to recover from. I think probably that the most interesting and important question in British politics right now is about coherence or lack of coherence on the right of British politics. Because I think Labour are there for the beating. I think if somehow they manage to get to a stage where we still have a Labour government or a kind of left-wing rainbow government of some description after the next general election, I mean, I think that would be an appalling state of affairs. So I think that the right of British politics has got to find a way of cohering. And we've got to get these guys out as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, they're in such trouble, though. I do sometimes wonder if they won't last the full term. I mean, there was word over the weekend, you know, if the economy really does continue to spiral in a downward direction, and there is a conversation to be had about whether the IMF needs to intervene, whether the pound becomes terribly, terribly weak, and all of those things that can happen to the markets. And the markets can sometimes ruin the reputation and the career of not only a chancellor, but of a prime minister. I mean, it's not inconceivable that we could have some kind of economic crisis, is it? Which could force an early election.
Well, you see, the thing is, people were rightly fed up with the Conservatives after, some of the things that happened after the last Parliament. We went through many different prime ministers, but of course, it is actually quite a bit easier to remove a sitting Conservative Prime Minister or leader, for that matter, than it is to remove a Labour Prime Minister, Labour leader. So it's really difficult for Keir Starmer to be removed. And then, of course, the question is, who are you going to replace him with? Is that going to be Angela Rayner? Is that going to be Rachel Reeves? I have to say, Rachel Reeves' recent trip to China, I saw her with, I think it was a financial guy from China, whoever he is. All I'd say is one of them looked a lot happier than the other one. And also, I'd say... Rachel Reeves isn't doing a great job of hiding how she feels at this and her particular state at this moment in time.
No.
There's a little bit of a kind of like Liz Truss vibes when Liz Truss sat next to Jeremy Hunt when he completely ripped apart her budget in front of her. It's a similar sort of situation. Potentially a bit worse, actually, because I think the borrowing costs are higher than they were under Liz Truss.
Well, they actually were. And this is why it's kind of ironic that, that Liz Truss resigned and lost her job and lost her government as a result of something that actually wasn't as bad in terms of how it affected the economy as what Rachel Reeves is doing. But worse than that, on top of that, the Times today has got a story saying basically Sir Richard Dearlove, former chief of MI6, says we should not be, as Labour are planning to do, relying so heavily on China for energy infrastructure. He says he's worried that Ed Miliband, the Energy Secretary, will ignore advice from the security services in order to push for his ideologically driven net zero plan. They're asking basically Chinese wind power companies about investing in assembly plants and manufacturing in the UK. So clearly, the Chinese know what they want out of Britain, and they've given her a kind of 600 million, backhander, as it were, which is not worth the paper it's written on, really. And a lot of people worried that China will be getting their mitts into the infrastructure of Britain's energy.
Well, look, this is what desperation does to you. I mean, I thought all of these issues had been addressed, dealt with. I thought there was a consensus around them when it came to China having a role with our infrastructure. Clearly, that lesson's been lost in the Labour Party. But look, the biggest bind... I mean, I think, Rachel Reeves is in a situation where she may have to break her fiscal rules very soon. She's either going to have to cut spending more, she's either going to have to borrow more, or she's going to have to raise taxes again. So she's utterly desperate for this thing called growth. She needs it. and this is the final play. But I don't think Rachel Reeves is going to be Chancellor for that much longer. I think I wouldn't be surprised if somebody like Pat McFadden, who's currently the Cabinet Office Minister, I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes Chancellor of the Exchequer. I mean, I think Rachel Reeves is a busted fluff. But this is very bad for Labour, because actually Rachel Reeves had a pretty good reputation. You know, actually during the general election campaign, she was seen as being quite steely. She built quite good relationships.
Yeah, but that was because they told us she was, though. You know, at the end of the day, they sold us a pup, didn't they? You know, they made out that it was going to be amazing to have the first woman Chancellor. You know, Keir Starmer was practically, you know, sort of like a Cheshire cat, as he explained how wonderful it would be for the women and girls of this country to look up and see a woman doing a job that, you know, why wouldn't she be able to do it, you know? In fact, we can have a look at that. Let's have a look at what he said.
When Rachel Reeves stands up, she will be making history. And I can tell you, young women and girls across the country will be watching, they will look up, and they will notice.
Yeah, and now they'll say, what's she doing? You know, she seems to be ruining the economy.
Well, this is the other thing. You know, when Rachel Reeves became Chancellor of the Exchequer, I mean, we had about 2 weeks of not just her fans, but her herself, banging on about how wonderful it was that she was the first female Chancellor. Yeah. I have to say, I hadn't really even noticed. I don't really care.
No, nobody does.
What I care about, and what I think most people care about, is that the Chancellor of the Exchequer knows what they are doing.
Yes.
You can't get a much more important role than Chancellor of the Exchequer. If they get it wrong, as she's got it wrong, it has a real impact on the day-to-day lives of every British citizen. The cost of the mortgages they pay, the inflation in our shops, and also now our national security. So, you know, I really just think her reputation is in tatters. I think the Labour government's reputation is in tatters. But I go back to that key point. You know, we potentially, you know, I don't know what's the trigger for her to be an early election. I'd be very surprised if there is one. Sadly, I think we're looking down the track of probably another 4 years of this. And I think that the key question is the right of British politics needs to sort itself out. I think the Conservative Party needs to regain the trust and credibility on a number of key issues, the economy, immigration, the list goes on, because we've got to find a way of getting rid of Labour at the next available opportunity.
I mean, they seem to have this obsession with making announcements. You know, today there's yet another announcement. You know, all of the problems that they've got, as you mentioned, immigration, you know, the NHS, you know, the economy, and all pretty big deals to actually work out and to get to grips with. You know, but yet Starmer's launching himself a yet another revolution, and it's the AI revolution this time. Nobody quite knows what he's talking about. He's claiming that there's going to be £470 billion unleashed into the economy over the next 5 years. But nobody knows where that figure comes from. Nobody knows what AI is going to do to change anybody's lives. If anything, it's probably going to lose people their jobs, isn't it?
So two of the key things that really sprung out for me over in the weekend papers about the Labour government, one of them was the Tulip Sadiq affair. The other one was also Wes Streeting. And, of course, Wes Streeting is said to be one of the leading lights in the Labour government. And he was effectively seemed to be saying, again, this whole notion that we can't be vigorous when it comes to grooming gangs. If we are, it's going to lead to more racial tensions and hate directed at one group. You know, that's the sort of thinking. Politically correct thinking is the sort of thing that has meant that the evil of the grooming gangs has been concealed for so long. Okay, so the idea that Wes Streeting is the one person who can sort this out, I question, and I question very significantly after what he said. You know, we've got to have a full inquiry into what happened to the grooming gangs. It's got to look specifically at the issue, and it needs to look at the fact that why is it that a huge proportion of those carrying out these crimes were British Pakistani men? What cultural reasons are behind that? What can be done to tackle those issues? Because if we're going to have people move into this country, they need to integrate, they need to love our country, and they need to engage in our values. And if they don't, they need to be deported. Nobody is saying that all Muslim people are problematic. No one is saying that. No one is saying that all British Pakistani men are problematic. But what we are saying is that a disproportionate number of those committing vile crimes towards the most vulnerable society do happen to be British Pakistani men. Why is that? Yeah. We need to interrogate that and investigate that without fear and further.
Well, the other question for me is, and I've put this to several people over the last few days, last week, is, you know, if, for example, not all Muslim people are being vilified here, and if, for example, we know that, you know, only a small number of the Muslim population is involved in this kind of behaviour, why are the Labour Party so scared of upsetting the rest of the Muslim population, who surely must also think that these rape gangs are abhorrent? You know, why on earth would they be offended by the Labour Party having a go at criminals within their community?
Well, look, I mean, I think it is up to key figures in that community to provide leadership when it comes to tackling this problem, right? They need to accept that no one is saying that everybody within that community is problematic. We realise the vast majority of people are not problematic, but we do realise there is a problem within their community with a disproportionately large number.
But I haven't seen anybody from those communities saying that, have you?
I haven't seen it. If I have, I've missed it. I don't doubt the fact that the vast majority of people in that community share our, disgust at what's happened.
Well, they should say so, shouldn't they?
But they should be visible in saying so. They should be visible in saying so. But I think the Labour Party, one of the reasons why they're nervous about all of this is they lost a shed load of seats at the general election to Islamist candidates. The Palestine-Israel situation is still bubbling away. The last thing Labour want to do is make that situation more difficult. But Labour need to show leadership on this moral issue, and actually key members of the Muslim community should be very, very explicit in showing leadership on this and rooting out the problems that lie behind so many people within their community engaging in these appalling acts.
Yeah, absolutely right. I couldn't agree more. Tom, very good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Tom Hunt, former Conservative MP there, saying that it is all going horribly wrong for Labour. I disagree with him, though, that we've got another 4 years of this. I don't think they're going to last. GB says, Mike, of course AI is massively important for our economy, but the sight of Starmer and Reeves desperately scrabbling around for answers to all their problems by just saying AI to everything is beyond pathetic, says Jeff in EC1. And Mark in Selby says, Mike, Starmer says he will invest our money in artificial intelligence to boost the economy. He'd be better off getting some intelligence within his cabinet. I agree. Oh, and when Labour gets kicked out of office, I hope the next Prime Minister either removes his picture from number 10 or puts it right next to the Kazi. Happy Monday. Let's get a voice note from Clifford.
Morning, Mike. Clifford from Devon. Good show as always. Regarding AI, has Keir Starmer been looking at them adverts on Facebook? You know, the ones that say if you spend £100, you can make £1,000 per minute on this stock market using AI. Absolutely ridiculous.
He probably has. I mean, also, isn't it rather amusing that the one guy who probably knows more about AI than anybody else in the entire world is Elon Musk, right? Who Keir Starmer doesn't speak to, who Keir Starmer doesn't invite to a technology summit, who Keir Starmer thinks should be investigated by the Hate Crimes Unit just in case he's saying anything which might be considered to be a bit offensive on his X platform. Why don't you talk to Elon Musk about AI? At least he could probably explain it to you properly. But the problem for a lot of people is that AI is intrusive into their lives. It's going to create machinery which is going to reach into your health data and start flogging it to somebody, probably the Chinese, so they can get even more sort of knowledge about the West and how it all works. I just don't think people need it, and I think they don't want it. And as we said earlier, the main 3 words associated with AI in this country are robot, worried and dangerous. You know, that's basically it. Let's see if we can change anybody's mind. Coming up, we're going to talk about the state of the NHS and why 500,000 people were languishing on trolleys in A&E departments for more than 12 hours last year. We're going to talk about that, plus whether this health data collection by AI is actually a good thing. I'm not sure it is. This is Talk. Open the door, load it with the washing, detergent, sort the washing, put the washing in, close the door and unload it when it's finished. It's a bit like the Labour government, bloody waste of time and useless. I see what you're saying there. And also on the subject of de-icing my freezer, somebody here says you can buy a self-de-icer. Not quite sure about that. Jenny in Oxford says the UK doesn't have any data to open up to AI companies. It only holds its citizens' private data to provide its public services. Big data from the public is valuable, but it is not the government's. Well, this is the trouble, you see. It's not clear. I've read several pieces this morning about AI and how it's all going to change our lives, but nobody's really sure what it actually physically is. Or, you know, how's it going to manifest itself? Peter Carl said at the weekend, you know, it's going to be great for everybody equally. Well, what does that even mean? Let's talk to Pasha Mukherjee, NHS doctor. Pasha, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. I know we weren't going to talk about AI in the NHS, but I don't know whether you've heard of anything that it's going to be used for. I mean, there's going to be a big announcement this morning by the Prime Minister. It's not clear to me. I mean, people say AI like some kind of magic bullet, you know, as if everything that is to do with AI makes the world a better place. I mean, do you have any idea what the plans are for the AI rollout for the NHS?
I can definitely see some very good uses for it. I think there's definitely, whenever something's new, there's a lot of mistrust around it, definitely with technology.
Yeah.
And I personally have experience with this as well. One thing that, for example, in my life takes a long time is documentation for patients. It's something that takes away time that I can spend with patients. I mean, you must have gone to your GP practice and often seen your GP typing away at the same time as talking to you. Sometimes it means that they can't always make eye contact with you and actually fully connect. And I feel that really restricts me from being the best GP that I can be myself. And one role that AI can have is, for example, as a dictator app, where essentially it listens to a conversation, transcribes it, and essentially turns it into a consultation. I have used technology like this, and unfortunately, it still is the case of, is it any good yet? I think I still have to do the arduous task of, checking back to see if the transcription is correct.
Yeah, because
because
it's important to do that, isn't it? Because if it's not correct, that could be a real problem.
Exactly. And to be honest, I did dabble with using AI technology like that, and it just frustrated me that it didn't exactly get into the nuance of the conversations that we were having with patients, and it didn't always think like humans, essentially. I definitely think there's a role for is enhancing tasks, and there are some tasks that are very labor intensive, like auditing in the NHS, gathering data, interpreting data. But if it means that there's got to be a human at the end of the task, again, checking that to make sure that it is reliable, I'm not sure if we're quite there yet in terms of the technology being reliable enough.
Yeah, exactly right. Because, I mean, we were going to talk, and we are going to now talk about the record 518,000 patients left languishing on trolleys in A&E for 12 hours. This is new figures from NHS England. An average of 5,408 patients a day in hospital with flu last week. You know, I'm not sure what AI could do to help that particular problem, you know, because we've clearly got, more patients in A&E than they can handle and not enough beds.
Correct. And, I'm going to be very curious to see exactly how the Labour government addresses this. I definitely think there's a role for social care. I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have at the moment, that we really do still have a very much a two-tier system where, as a GP myself, if I can't go see a patient, the best thing that I can do is call an ambulance, and then they need to be taken to hospital. There's nothing in the middle where somebody can be looked after at home and avoid being taken to hospital. I also think that, culturally speaking, we're still a country where our elderly people, they're left to their own devices. And I really would encourage families to check in on their elderly members, family members, just because it makes the job for the healthcare system that much easier, having that connection, that, maybe a young person involved in the care of an elderly family member who might not be able to use technology, who might not be able to communicate their problems well enough to medical staff. So I think, the whole country needs to come together in this point to kind of help the NHS out. Again,
yeah.
I know.
But that's the trouble, isn't it? I mean, last week the NHS issued a statement saying that if you're going to come to A&E, please come on your own. So, I mean, if you're an elderly person, you're being encouraged not to bring a young person with you to help you because they said there's not enough room.
I think when it comes to being in hospital, I do agree there's an infection control risk. The more people that are coming into hospital, obviously, once you're at hospital, it's a different story. But it's I'm talking about the bit in the middle when people are at home. I know that there's definitely a big technological gap between the generations before us, where elderly people are still struggling with technology to be able to pick up the phone, call their GPs, or even communicate and book appointments in the appropriate times. So it really helps. It goes such a long way when they have a family member, a young person who can help out, who can watch over them, really.
Yeah, sure. Pasha, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Pasha Mukherjee, the NHS doctor. On the bad news for the NHS, really, there isn't any good news at all, I'm afraid. But is AI going to make any difference? Very much doubt it. Bill in Cheshire says this: the Sussexes and the LA fires. Thank heavens that they are now involved. The winds and fires will cease, houses and lives will be rebuilt, and LA will be saved due to their intervention. And see how they did it on a new 10-part series for Netflix, probably launching soon, called Royal Rescue. Yeah, you do wonder, don't you? Maybe that'll be the next plan for old Meghan and Harry. People calling them disaster tourists. I'm afraid they're not very popular, even in their own hometown. Well, at least her hometown. 0344 499 1000. We're just waiting for Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin launch of the New Glenn rocket for the first time. Cape Canaveral is where we're going to be looking at it from. We'll see whether it goes up as fast as Elon Musk's do, whether he can bring it back and recapture it like Elon Musk can. Because if he can't, he's already lost the game, hasn't he? If you haven't got the ability to recapture the rocket that you've just sent up, I wouldn't bother, because you're going to look pretty antediluvian next to Elon Musk, who's obviously been doing this for quite a lot longer. Coming up, Richard Tice will be here from Reform.
whitewashing all the government's plans, which are based on growth.
And it can't be doing Britain PLC any favours. I mean, Rupert Lowe put a tweet out the weekend saying that, you know, talking to some of his friends in business, the world is laughing at Britain right now. They're looking at the government of Britain, and they're the laughing stock of the world in business.
Which is true and very sad, but we are heading towards stagflation, where inflation is persistently higher than the Bank of England wants, and yet we've got no growth. And this is all because of the disastrous blunder budget. I mean, the truth is that Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer, they have crashed the economy.
They have.
I mean,
no question.
They have made the Liz Truss Kwasi budget literally look like a walk in the park, a breeze compared to what is going on at the moment. And you cannot grow the economy at a sensible rate, which, by the way, should be 2 to 3% per annum, if you've got these high levels of taxes all over the place. You've got the ever-increasing regulation, risk, and being an entrepreneur doesn't pay in this country. And as or more important of anything is the price of net zero, which is impacting on all our bills, impacting on industries, and that's the key thing. And that's why this laughable sort of announcements about AI. Look, AI can be very smart, but it does use a lot of electricity.
It does. Means and we don't have a lot of that.
Well, A, we haven't got enough of it, come back to that in a second, and B, if you want to be competitive in it, your electricity needs to be cheap. And ours is the most expensive in the developed world. Oh, and what happened last week? We nearly ran out of the stuff.
We nearly had a blackout, didn't we? I mean, we were talking to an expert on it this last Thursday, I think it was, and we came literally this close.
We came very close.
Voluntary blackout.
We were importing in the order of 17% of our electricity, I think last Wednesday, it was, at one moment, from our good friends, the French. And that's probably not a smart thing to do, sending our money overseas.
No.
And it's, it's just, it's highlighting the absurdity of this net zero obsession that Labour are following the Tories' net zero obsession.
And this is what it says on the front page of the Times, that Labour is courting Chinese investment for its renewable energy revolution. And the former head of MI6, Sir Richard Dearlove, is saying, you know, this is a national security matter, and he's worried that Ed Miliband is going to do away with any national security concerns because of his mad, ideologically driven push to reach net zero. They basically want the Chinese to have all the wind power companies in this country, and they want them to put assembly plants all over the UK.
What's wrong with buying British? What's wrong with making British? The Chinese, they can't believe our utter negligent stupidity. So that we're now sort of buying Chinese wind turbines, buying Chinese solar panels by the few 100 million Mr. Miliband wants, because of course they can make it competitively over there because they've got modern-day slave labour markets, coupled along with cheap coal-fired electricity. So they're literally pretending at the whole renewables game to make themselves sound good, the big elitist global institutional events and Davos and places like that. So they tick all sorts of boxes, and then they utterly shaft us by selling us this stuff, so that we then produce very expensive electricity.
And then, of course, they then run it all. So if they decide to pull the plug effectively at any point, they can.
Or if they decide to insert some form of malware in all the software that runs all this stuff, then again, they shaft us.
It is absolutely unbelievable.
This stuff it's actually not that difficult to comprehend, and it's just not very good to put any of your critical national infrastructure, including electricity, including things like gas transmission, in the hands of overseas actors who do not have our best interests at heart. And that centres around the Chinese, number one, and the Russians, number two.
Yeah, and then speaking of foreign interference, what about Tulip Sadiq and her campaign leaflets?
Hard to keep up with her
campaign leaflets being found in the palace that was used by her auntie, who was running Bangladesh corruptly for many years and has now been kicked out. I mean, beggars belief.
It's hard to keep up with her burgeoning property portfolio.
Yeah.
Who paid for what? All we do know is...
Oh, we know she didn't.
Well, she clearly didn't.
Right.
I think she has now sort of reassessed. The wording was hysterical.
Yeah.
They've reassessed how she came into possession of her property in London.
Yeah.
So I think most people listening and watching are pretty clear in their own mind how they paid for their own property.
Yes.
But she, as a minister of this Labour government, didn't know how she paid for her property.
Yes.
And by the way, what's her current title?
She's the head of corruption, I believe. Corruption minister.
Presumably she's the anti-corruption.
Oh, sorry, yeah. It's easy to confuse.
or easy to confuse.
I thought she was head of corruption.
I mean,
but also she's old Keir Starmer's best friend, you know, and he is like the kiss of death. I mean, if he came over to you and shook your hand, you'd really seriously have to, you know, go and get it disinfected, because everything he touches literally burns down.
It's hard to know which way round it is, but I'm not sure anybody wants to be Keir Starmer's best friend, and equally he doesn't seem to have many friends.
He has very
Lord
few.
Ali.
Yeah, well, Lord Ali's gone very quiet.
Very quiet.
But
Maybe
don't
he's
worry.
still on holiday.
Yeah, don't worry, though, because Starmer's been quite good friends with old dictator Auntie, because apparently, according to Guido over the weekend, he met the Awami League boss, who's linked to Talib Sadiq, and the Auntie just last month.
Last month?
Last month, according to Guido.
After she had been ousted.
Yeah, and he's had her. He's had her at a reception down in the House of Commons when he was leader of the opposition. He's also been out to her gaff while she was, you know, running Bangladesh with a rod of steel. I mean it's hard to believe, isn't it?
But equally, of course, you know, Keir Starmer rather likes the idea of running things with a rod of steel.
He does.
I mean, his sort of authoritarian, dictatorial approach to running the UK. He's trying to clamp down on free speech.
Yes.
Anybody who's concerned about free speech or child rape gangs, well, essentially, you're linked to the far right, apparently.
I see Labour have now got one chink in the armour, though, because one Labour MP has now come out and said that, yes, there should be an inquiry.
So that's correct. One Labour MP has said there needs to be an inquiry. I think this is going to be a critical week, and we will obviously be asking more questions in and around the Commons this week, and it may well be that more Labour MPs, having been back in their constituencies, seen the state of their inbox, their emails from constituents, I think some more will essentially sort of join the call for an inquiry. Burnham slightly set the way, calling for a limited national inquiry. I think we're going to see a shift from this government this week. They'll probably fudge it, maybe with a slightly different form of words. But I just sense something is going to happen. It's unsustainable, this current position. As more and more comes out, over the weekend at our conference in Chester, we had a very brave victim and survivor, Elizabeth Harper, speaking at our conference. The whole place was, including myself, just moved to tears.
Yeah,
it
it's
was
amazing.
Truly,
the stories are awful,
horrific,
aren't they?
absolutely horrific, and more will come out. And you know, we very clearly said, Nigel's repeated it, that if the Labour government doesn't hold an inquiry, then we at Reform, we will organise a separate independent inquiry. We'll make that decision. We'll give them to the end of January. We're generous with time. It's two and a bit weeks away.
Could have a new chancellor by then.
Well, we could have.
You know, apparently
possible.
she's depressed. Apparently, according to a single cabinet minister who spoke to the Times over the weekend, she's looked at all the options that she's got. There are many, but they're all bad. Not one of them is any good. So even if she lasts until the end of March, the word is that she'll be out by June, if not before.
Well, I think they came in on a platform of stability. How's that going? On fixing the foundations. They haven't fixed the foundations. They've literally blown them up and sabotaged
They
them.
really have.
And
government of service, they said.
Yeah, the only thing they're serving is themselves.
Exactly.
And dictators from other countries, it seems to me.
Well, let's have a look.
And gaining lots of air miles.
Exactly right, yeah. In fact, we're going to do a graph, we're working on it now, we haven't quite perfected it, of who's where at any given point. You know, like those maps they used to have in the Second World War?
Sort of heat map.
Where you just move people around, you know, but now we can do it digitally. I mean, she's in China. I mean, there's normally Miliband will be somewhere in, like, South America. There'll be some, you know, they'll all be in Davos soon. But I must play this again because we played it earlier. Lee Anderson, who clearly has got a second career if he needs to have one on the comedy circuit. This was him in Chester. Was it Chester?
Chester on
Saturday. Have a look.
Look who we've got running the country. Free gear Kia. Rachel from accounts. You know that one, don't you? We've got that famous no-brainer, Angela Rayner. Mad Miliband, the net zero fanatic. And let's not forget our very own mastermind, David Lammy. It's not meant to be funny, this thing, you know. He's a proper charmer, isn't he? Like, listen, I hope nobody's filming this. But keep this one to yourselves. We've got over 6,000 villagers in the United Kingdom. And if you took the village idiot from every village, right, and put them 6,000 village idiots into Tottenham, David Lammy would still be the village idiot.
Absolutely brilliant. He brought the house down.
It really is funny. It's so funny.
Lee's on cracking form.
Do give him my best, because that is absolutely, because the timing is impeccable. You know, it's funnier than most comedians out there. Let's have a listen to this voice note from Sam.
So let me get this straight. So security services, ours and around the Western world, have warned about security issues with China, and some are producing certain technical ties. And Rachel Raquel from Accounts is letting China in. I mean, I know her boss is Kia John Starling Ping, but blimey, Charlie, it's all going a bit Pete Tong, Mike.
It is going a bit Pete Tong. It's been going Pete Tong for some time now. I just don't know what else can go wrong. You know, while they've got all these problems, as you say, seriously, grooming gangs, economy, NHS, we've got reports saying, you know, something like 500,000 people waited more than 12 hours on trolleys in A&E last year alone. You know, we've got horrendous problems with the civil service. You know, everywhere you look.
The truth is nothing works, and various elements of the public sector are talking about striking again. Yeah. Seems to me the only thing that does actually work is the ability of this government to buy off their union paymasters with ever-increasing wage increases, which, of course, is why we've actually got an inflation problem.
Right.
And this is what... So you've got this sort of doom loop of stagflation where you've got high inflation, you've got no growth heading towards negative growth, and that... I mean, if we have 2 quarters of negative growth or zero growth at all, then the whole Labour shtick of stability and fixing the foundations, it's in tatters, and then I think she's in deep, deep trouble.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's interesting, for the first time now we're hearing Labour MPs who'd been very supportive now questioning whether or not she's up to the job.
Yeah.
The next question is, OK, well, who would you replace her with?
Quite.
I mean, surely not our Angela.
Well, certainly not. She can't do hard sums because she couldn't work out how much she had to take for a tax break on selling of the 2 homes up in Manchester. So, I mean, she's clearly not mathematically adept enough, I don't think. People keep talking about Pat McFadden, but they can't keep giving everything to Pat McFadden because he seems to be their version of a safe pair of hands. Because I don't like the look of Pat McFadden. I mean, I had him on once. He's never been back since. Because he's just the guy who moved next door because the rules changed about what mortgage you could claim in Parliament. So he moved next door, rented the house next door to his, so that he could claim the rent. You kind of go in and so he could rent out his other place. I mean,
well, then he's probably the perfect person to be a chancellor if he's fiddling the books and cooking the books.
And he gave the old Labour line of, he said, well, I didn't do anything that was outside of the rules.
I mean,
well, that's not really the point, is it?
Well, I mean, these are all, in a sense, these are all the hypotheticals if we keep heading south. And that's on a sort of national basis, per person, of course, because of the high levels of mass immigration that are continuing under this regime. Per person, we're getting a lot poorer. And people can feel it.
Oh, yeah.
They can feel it in their pockets, and... You look at some of the business numbers, job hirings are down, job vacancies are up.
Companies' national insurance bills are through the roof.
Through the roof.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there's a lot of anxiety out there, and they've got to reverse course. They've got to adopt the only way out of this is to adopt our plans, which of course they won't do. I mean, they're talking about again, sort of saying we're going to slash government waste and inefficiency. Well, I'm pretty sure in the manifestos and contract, the only one who had that seriously in there, so I'd said you've got to save £5 and 100, and now they're adopting my policy. Well, I mean, you know, it's a form of flattery, but we just know they won't actually do it.
No, because they're in hock to all the unions. As soon as they say anything about removing people from any government department in terms of redundancies or anything like that, they'll just be told, no, you can't do that. And that'll be the end.
And that'll be the end of it. Whereas actually what you've got to do is you've got to make wholesale cuts to quangos, commissions that nobody's ever heard of, value for money departments, this and that.
Well, they've set up about
wholesale review, root and branch is what is required. Because otherwise, you know, this if you keep spending more than you're earning, whether it's at home, at work, or when you're running a country, eventually the lenders say, we're done, folks. And that's the issue with the bond markets. They are very close to saying, we've had enough of this.
And there's
We're
no
not
money
playing
left.
anymore.
Yeah.
And then there's no money left.
Well, the last Labour government took until the end of their sort of, 12, 13-year term to run out of money. This lot are running out of money after 6 months. So, I mean, at least I suppose they're a bit more efficient at it now than the Blair and Brown Brigade were. Richard Tice, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Coming up, we're going to find out exactly what the last damage was, because yesterday was the first rail strike for one Sunday out of the next 5 months. They're going to be striking every single Sunday from now until May. What do you think is going to happen? Think the government will give them more money? Probably. This is Talk. No natural intelligence. Great show as always. And Nick says, can't we replace Rachel from accounts with an AI version? Surely it would do a better job, says Nick in Woking. Well, funny enough, Rachel Reeves apparently is already using AI to reply to Treasury emails. They've got a name for it. It's called the Correspondence Triage Automation Tool. Well, that tells you all you need to know about why AI is a complete utter waste of time. What it basically does is it gives an automated response to somebody who writes in an email. So it doesn't actually solve the problem. It just answers somebody by saying, thanks for your email. Brilliant. Let's talk to Ben Clapworthy, because yesterday was the first West Coast Avanti-style train strike, basically, which is going to now last until May. They're going to take it up every Sunday and strike. But they are running some trains. It's the train managers who are on strike. Let's find out from Ben how it all went. Ben, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
So, how devastating was it? How easy or not was it to get up and down the West Coast line?
Well, Avanti were able to run a skeleton service yesterday, about 4 services an hour in and out of Euston, which is considerably lower than what they would normally do on a Sunday. They were advising people to travel before or after the strike, which doesn't really work if you're, say, planning a weekend away in London, right, or trying to get somewhere for work to be there first thing on Monday morning. So there was a lot of disruption. There'll be a lot of inconvenienced people. It would be one thing if it was for 1 week. This is actually every Sunday until late May, right, that these train managers, they're the people that make announcements, come and check your ticket, but also help with any sort of onboard problems. Those are the train managers. This strike is them. They are the ones striking, and it's all over rest day working, right, which to normal people is overtime pay.
Right. And they're being offered something like £600 to do it, aren't they? And they're not happy with that.
So the train drivers at Avanti have been offered and accepted £600 already, which is an astronomical amount of money for a shift. The train managers, they've been offered £300 to work rest days at the weekends and £250, approximately, give or take here and there, to work rest days that fall during the week. This is because fundamentally there's not enough staff. The railways have historically always relied on overtime and goodwill agreements. It's been largely accepted. Most people on the railways work a 4-day shift pattern. It does vary from operator to operator, but rest day working was seen as an attractive way to earn more money.
Well, they don't need to earn more money. I mean, that's the thing now. They don't need to earn more money because they're so well paid. They're quite happy just working 4 days a week.
So train managers on north of £55,000 a year at Avanti. This is obviously money on top of that. One source was saying to me that had they accepted these offers, they would already be the highest, or at least one of the highest overtime payments for conductors, train managers in the industry. But what we're seeing is what we talked about last year. It's that the government, the new government, paved the way for these huge pay deals with no restrictions tied to them, no form of modernisations. They came in, the leaders of the RMT, Mick Lynch from the RMT, who has said he's retiring in the spring, he went in, met Louise Haigh, the former Transport Secretary, and did a deal where, well, there was no need for modernisations, there was no need for reforms, and now what we're seeing is different little disputes popping up across the network where people are going, well, if we manage to get that, why don't we try for this now? And seeing that they're claiming a victory in their strike action for the last 2 years up until last summer, was actually, on the other side, people would say there wasn't a victory at all. It was just a new government that were more than happy to kowtow.
Yeah, well, they just rolled over, basically. They didn't actually challenge them on anything. Absolutely right. Ben, good to talk to you. Thanks very much. We've got to run. Lots more to come in the next hour. Will Kingston's going to join us. We'll talk to him about the state of play. Harry Cole from The Sun as well. This is Talk. I'm Mike Graham. We'll be back after the news.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 2 minutes past 8. I don't know where the time goes. I'm starting to say earlier and earlier. 2 hours already. We're already halfway through the show, for heaven's sake. 4 glorious hours every single weekday morning, of course, of Morning Glory from 6 until 10. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be along with the news after that. How about this? We haven't done this story yet. A woke councillor's banned its staff from asking people for their Christian name. Officials say some may be offended by the term. Workers have been told not to mention religion unless it is relevant to the information being communicated. This is in Sutton, South London. 13-page language guide tells them to speak about a person's first name, given name or forename. Don't ask for a Christian name. To be honest, I don't think anyone's asked me for a Christian name for a long time. But again, you don't need a 13-page guide, do you? Sounds like something AI would come up with, because, of course, AI is now the big subject today, because Keir Starmer's going to make a speech about how brilliant it's going to be for the economy. He reckons it's going to generate something like £470 billion over the next 10 years, except he doesn't explain how or why or exactly what is going to make that happen. Nobody really seems to know what AI is good for. So far, we know that Rachel Reeves is answering emails with AI, with some kind of automated response scenario. Well, I mean, there's only one question I've got for Rachel Reeves. When are you resigning? She's coming back from China, where she got £600 million from the Chinese as some kind of investment scenario. That is 60 times less than Indonesia got, 40 times less than Hungary got, and 30 times less than Peru got. So it's not exactly been a great trip for Rachel Reeves. She's also said to be depressed. She's had a look around at all the options she's got, and she doesn't really like any of them. And she doesn't realise now what she's going to do. But it looks as though the skids are under her. Looks like Keir Starmer wants to get rid of her, and she'll probably be gone, if not by the end of March, certainly by June. I don't think she'll be here even as long as that. 0344 499 1000. Have we got a new voice note from Chris? Let's have a listen.
Chris from Barnsley. First message of the new year. Great start to 2025, the year of common sense, and we're all on board with you. Isn't it ironic that Keir Starmer is well on board with all this AI stuff when he's the most robotic person that's ever been in any semblance of power in this country? Can you just imagine it in your house, the Starmer bot? My name's Keir Bot. Hey! Oh, I'm malfunctioning, the country's crashing. Oh no.
We are prepared for government. We are prepared for government. It's just been a loop, isn't it? We are prepared for government. We have prepared you some scrambled eggs. We are prepared. I mean, dearie me. Talking about Meghan and Harry in this hour as well. This from H. Helen, who says, "Morning, Mike. Great show. With regards to Meghan Markle, she's used the LA fires to advertise her crappy show by bringing it up when the victims of the fires don't care. It means nothing. They don't even have a home, never mind a television." Well, exactly right. She's cancelled her Netflix show on the grounds that it might clash with what's going on in Los Angeles vis-a-vis the 24 people who have now died in the fires there. Also, we'll be talking about Jeff Bezos. He's supposed to be launching a rocket this morning, but I don't think it's happened yet. It was meant to happen at 7:30. It's now 6 minutes past 8, and the rocket has still not gone up. So I imagine Elon Musk is probably sitting back laughing at him, going, he can't even launch his own rocket, the plank. This is Morning Glory, of course. We are here for the duration. Let's talk to... we're going to talk to Harry Cole, actually, later on in this hour, the political editor of The Sun. He's got a column in the paper today talking about Shamima Begum and why we don't really need to bring her back to this country, despite what Sebastian Gorka said the other day to The Times, and despite what some other people are beginning to say, that we have some responsibility to house these ISIS monsters. I don't think so. Let's talk to Will Kingston, political commentator. Will, very good morning to you.
G'day, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. So, for Rachel Reeves' next trick, apparently not content with ruining the economy by giving all of us more money to pay into the exchequer, she's now going to go after civil servants, and she's going to start slashing and burning away at the government departments of Whitehall. I don't think she's going to have much success there, do you?
No surprises. No, I don't. As an aside, thank you to Chris from Barnsley for that voice note. That made my morning. I thought that was very funny. Look, we have to run off the evidence that we've seen so far, Mike, and that is this government has pursued spending cuts and tax rises on areas where they're not going to raise a lot of money or save a lot of money, but they're going to do a lot of harm to people. Like you look at the VAT with private schools, which it's debatable whether it will actually raise any money at all. and yet 3 private schools have already closed.
Yeah.
You look at the winter fuel payments, which again, in the greater scheme of things, won't do much, but it will really hurt pensioners. These are all measures which actually don't actually get to the nub of the economic problem, because the big things, you know, your net zero lunacy, throwing more money at the NHS without serious reform, they're the things that actually cost the economy money, but because they are articles of faith for the Labor Party, they don't touch them. That is the ideological kind of underpinning of what they believe in.
Right.
So this is all just around the edges without any real reform, but actually, unfortunately, things that hurt a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly right. And she went off to China amidst a bit of a storm around that, because people were saying she shouldn't be going to China. The markets are in turmoil. You know, the Treasury is having to step in, and gilt yields are going through the roof, the highest I think since 1998. You know, we're paying more now in interest than we were supposed to be doing. So the whole experiment of the budget has kind of fallen flat on its face, hasn't it?
Yeah, look, there's 2 things here. Number one, how bad are these guys at politics, and who is advising them? You know, going off to China when the economy is in free fall, talking about AI when people are thinking about rape gangs. Like, AI is important, don't get me wrong, but this is not the conversation that we need to be having right here, right now. But I think there's another point that needs to be made here, Mike, and that is the world is becoming less globalised. We're going to be breaking up more and more into the blocks of the EU, US and China and Asia, and the UK needs to make some serious choices. They can't just have their finger in each of those pies. There is, unfortunately, and I'm not warmongering, but unfortunately there is a very good chance that the US will be in some sort of a conflict with China by the end of this decade, whether that's military or whether that's just increased economic tension. And we've got to make a choice. And I think the obvious choice is you double down on the US. But this government doesn't want to do that because they hate Trump, and ideologically, I actually think they're probably more comfortable with the EU, if not with China.
Yeah.
So this is the wrong position for us to go. We need to be aligning more and focusing on the US.
Yeah, I agree with you, but you're absolutely right. They won't do it because they can't bring themselves to do it. They can't bring themselves to talk about Elon Musk. All they can do is investigate him to see whether he's committing some kind of hate crime by sending tweets out to Keir Starmer. You know, they don't like Donald Trump. They've called him a racist. They've called him a rapist. They've called him a misogynist. You know, over time, you know, people remember that stuff. I mean, Trump has actually been quite conciliatory at the moment, it seems to me. He's been quite sensible. He's not the same Donald Trump that came into power in 2016. And so there's a lot they could be doing. But instead, as you say, they're sort of flailing around. I mean, this AI thing today is a good example. You know, who knows more about AI than Elon Musk? You know, but they're launching this AI, you know, revolution without having him on board in any way, shape or form.
Yeah, I would be very curious if you got Keir Starmer off script and just asked for a basic definition of what AI is.
Yeah.
I think you'd get a pretty poor answer. Again, important thing for us to consider, but you need to actually have this being driven by the private sector, not by government bureaucrats. None of the government front bench or cabinet would have any idea, really, the capabilities of AI.
No.
This is where you need to deregulate and let the private sector do its job. But that instinct just isn't there in the Labor Party. They don't have that as part of their DNA. Get out of the way and let the private sector sort this stuff out. Don't drive this stuff from Westminster.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, their instinct is to regulate the hell out of everything. Here's Peter Carl, who's the Science and Technology Minister, talking about AI.
There will be disruption caused by AI going forward, but you're right that it will also create a lot of new jobs, and it will also, if it's used wisely, it will make workers' lives in the workplace much more efficient, effective and satisfying, because some of the mundane tasks will be taken care of.
Yeah, but part of the work sometimes is mundane tasks. I mean, we've got Rachel Reeves apparently admitting that she uses AI to answer emails that she gets from people asking, you know, what questions are asked quite regularly. But all that means is that she doesn't answer the emails normally anyway, so I don't see how that helps her. Basically, at the end of the day, some automated response gets sent to somebody who sent in an email saying, thank you for your email, the Minister will respond in due course. And that's the end of that. So how has that saved anybody any time?
Yeah, well, tell me you don't care without telling me you don't care.
Yeah, right.
I think that was a very odd comment from her. But you know where we could actually, if they're actually saying that like AI is a tool for us to eliminate or reduce mundane day-to-day tasks, start with the public service.
Yeah.
Actually prove the point in the areas where you have direct control over. We have a bloated bureaucracy. Everyone knows that. So why doesn't the government say, you know what, we believe in this and we're going to put our money where our mouth is and we're going to reduce the size of the public service, or at least reduce it in particular areas by 25% using AI. And then we're going to use that as a case study, which the private sector can then take inspiration from. But unfortunately, they're not doing that. That's where really I think you could see some value out of this, but you're not going to see it there, unfortunately.
But that's it. If you did that properly, though, what would result would be a bunch of jobs disappearing. Right, so I don't see how that is in any way good for the economy. And as I say, I've now read it twice, this piece in The Guardian about how the AI revolution is going to change everything. And I can't make any sense of it. They say they're going to have a £470 billion boost to the economy. But it doesn't say how.
Yeah, look, again, above my pay grade in some respects, I think, but the one thing which I think is interesting that we're not talking about is if you do actually go all in on AI, and there are undoubtedly benefits of it, you basically take away a lot of those jobs which young people do in the first 5 or 6 years of their career, which are annoying and painful, but someone has to do them. Think like junior lawyers. All of the junior lawyer type jobs will end up being completely taken away by AI. But you need to do those sorts of junior, mundane jobs in order to learn to get to the senior levels. Right. And I don't think a lot of companies have really thought about how do you actually train young people and get young people up to speed if you're going to take away all of the kind of, I was about to say, S-kicker jobs that you have to do in the past to be able to advance.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Just a bit of breaking news. Jeff Bezos, Blue Origin, he was going to launch his new Glenn rocket for the first time in Florida. It was due to go at 7:30, then it was due to go at 7:45. It's now coming up to 8:14. They've just called it off. So even Jeff Bezos can't get his AI right. I think Elon Musk will be laughing all the way to the bank this morning, won't he?
Yeah, yet another late Amazon delivery. I guess he will. It is interesting how these guys just have this obsession with trying to go to space. There's a big ego thing, obviously, in that one planet isn't enough for them. Right. I don't really have much to say on this other than, look, I actually think we should be, promoting these sorts of billionaires from doing this sort of stuff. It's cool. It's, it's interesting. It will have benefits for humanity. I hope he gets it under control and gets it working. Good luck to him.
Right. I mean, we've got some generated AI pictures now of Keir Starmer and Elon Musk together. Let's have a look and see what they look like. And that is a kind of, it's a kind of a fun thing to do. And it looks like they're standing together and they're not really actually in the same picture because it's been artificially generated. It's all good stuff and good fun and all the rest of it. But does it really, does it change anything about the way we do it? Not really.
Yeah. No, that's the stuff. Not really. But look, there will be benefits to AI in the future, but again, I just don't think this is the conversation we need to be having right now. This is not what is important to the UK economy in the immediate future as the markets continue to pass down a very harsh judgment on the here and now.
Well, that's it. I mean, there's an awful lot at Labour's door. The waters are lapping around the ankles of the Prime Minister, as we like to say in politics. And, he's running out of excuses. He's running out of room. It looks like he's going to lose his Chancellor at some point in the next quarter, if not before. It looks like Tulip Sadiq isn't going to survive. That will mean he's lost 3 senior members of his cabinet within a year of being in power, which is pretty unprecedented.
Yeah, it is. I really do wonder, Mike, because we're going to be having this conversation for 4 years. This is unfortunately something which is...
I honestly don't think we are. I think it's going to come to a grinding halt before that.
But what happens? What's the mechanism by which we don't have to deal with this awful government? I can't see that mechanism.
Because the mechanism will come when the events change the way that everything is going on. If the economy collapses, which is possible that it might happen, that could be a reason. If the government collapses because of some other reason, because of some story that breaks, you've got to remember there's an awful lot of, what you might call trapdoors between now and the next couple of years, things that we still don't know, that we asked questions about back in July and August and September, things that we, relationships with Lord Ali, we still don't know really about how all that was working, exactly what, access did he have to government, exactly what decisions were made based on what he recommended. There's connections now with a corrupt government in Bangladesh between Keir Starmer, Tulip Sadiq and their personal friendship. There's all manner of things that could come out of the Southport case, which is due to start next week, which may or may not get underway. We've got an economy teetering on the brink of bankruptcy as a country. The IMF might be called in. There's any number of mechanisms. And the thing about politics, for me, and the times that I've followed it, is that you can never say that something won't happen, because it often does.
I can see how that would lead to the end of Starmer, and in fact I think now it's more likely than not that Starmer doesn't see out this term, but I'm still struggling to see how that means that the Labor Party will voluntarily put themselves up for execution at an election, politicians don't like to give up power, and unless
it won't be anything to do with their choice. It will be something that they are forced to do, and that's what I'm talking about.
We can only hope. We can only hope.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, I'm going to keep hoping. Good to talk to you, Will. Thanks very much indeed. Will Kingston, political commentator. Very, very soon we're going to be having a conversation about what on earth the IMF are going to say. A leading economist said it's not implausible that an IMF bailout could come with a requirement for an election. This was said at the weekend to secure explicit political acceptance of the bailout. And those of you who are not old enough to remember what happened in the 70s, you won't remember it. But, you know, basically the Chancellor of the Exchequer of this country had to go to the IMF with a begging bowl to ask for money. And then when that money was given, there were conditions attached to it. And that government collapsed as a result. So that's what could happen, in my view. And that's even before any of the other stuff comes out. 18 minutes past 8. Coming up, we're going to speak to Harry Cole from The Sun. He's got a column in there about Shamima Begum. And later on, Alan Duncan, documentary filmmaker, who's been out to visit Shamima Begum in the deserts of Syria. He's going to be giving us his report as well. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
22 minutes past 8. Welcome back to A Morning Glory. Rachel from Accounts announced a new £600 million deal with China, says Tony, equating to £120 million a year over 5 years. China is literally trolling her. And then he said, Johnny Rugby says, morning, Mike, whatever happened to Starmer's so-called crack team that was going in to sort out the problems in the NHS? Can someone please ask Keir Starmer? Well, very good question. A man that could ask Keir Starmer that question, of course, would be Harry Cole, political editor of The Sun. He joins us now. He's got a column in the paper today and every single Monday, of course. We're going to get onto that in a minute. Front page of the Sun today. It's got a big story about Kyle Walker, the love chief of Manchester City, who's apparently going off to Italy. Rather a good headline, La Dolce Vita. Also, that terrible story from Oldham, where a nurse was stabbed. She's in critical condition, having been stabbed in the A&E yesterday. A 37-year-old man arrested. Harry, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, good to talk to you. Very well indeed. For a Monday, you know, Monday morning arrives, you feel up and at 'em, you feel as though it's another great week for the Labour government. You know, Rachel Reeves apparently is depressed. She's coming back from China with a deal which is approximately 60 times worse than the one that Indonesia got, 40 times worse than the one Hungary got, and 30 times worse than the one Peru got. I'm not surprised she's depressed. So are we all.
Well, 600 million, that'll pay for a morning in the NHS, so good deal all round.
Yeah, absolutely right. Your lead this morning is on Shamima Begum. It was only last week that Sebastian Gorka, who is now in the new Trump administration, gave an interview to The Times saying that Britain should do its duty and bring her back to this country. I'm with you. I don't think we should.
Well, Sebastian Gorka, I mean, he slightly rode back from those comments now, said he was slightly misquoted and he wasn't necessarily talking about Begum, but rather sort of, look, there's hundreds of these people in camps. You've got to sort of distinguish between the two things. Obviously, his comments have launched a fresh round of hand-wringing of people that think that Shamima Begum should come home. Obviously, she was stripped of her British citizenship in 2019. She was a dual English-Bangladeshi citizen, so she's not a British citizen, and the courts, the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court, have sided with the government on that. She is not a British citizen, so bringing her here would be unusual now. And let's not ignore the fact that we have brought some of these people back to the UK, mainly children, British children who were, you know, orphaned by their parents, you know, appalling parents who took these children out to possibly the worst place in the world, which has been Syria and Iraq, under ISIS to fight for this so-called caliphate. It was actually just a bloodthirsty death cult. So, look, we have a duty to those innocent people, and I think innocent people should be looked after, and they're now in the care system, and rightly so, hopefully trying to get some form of life back after the most horrific start in life. But people that are not innocent, people that willingly went, people that not only willingly went, willingly stayed until the very bitter end. The fall of Raqqa in 2017 was 2 years after Shamima Begum, you know, left East London and joined the cause. And look, in the column tomorrow, I think, given that everyone else is using this as an opportunity to make the case that Shamima Begum should come home, and very lofty aim of putting her on trial, I thought it would be a good idea to just have a little look about what it actually would mean to bring her home, because a trial isn't going to happen. The whole point was that these people were able to go commit crimes in a different country, thousands of miles away. If they come home, where's the evidence that is going to be admissible to court? And what law have they broken? They changed the law in 2019 in exactly response to this. It is now illegal to travel to terror hotspots to fight or support groups like ISIS. But that law came in after all of this had happened, and it can't be applied retrospectively. So what they're basically saying in Bring Shamima Begum Home is bring her home to essentially live a life on benefits. Who's going to employ her? No one's going to give her a job, are they?
No, exactly, and also she'll
will get bored of her pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah, so exactly. She'll probably need a false identity. She'll need to be paid loads of money to exist in a place. I mean, I think 3 of her children died in Syria, so I don't think she's now got any children. But if she has more children, we'll have to support them. It's an absolute hiding to nothing, isn't it? But then I suppose the alternative question is, where does she go? Does she just stay in a refugee camp in Syria for the rest of her life?
Well, I mean, the Kurds have been guarding her for, guarded that camp for years. There's no reason for that to change. Just because the regime change in Syria doesn't necessarily mean there is suddenly going to, suddenly change the situation. The new regime in Syria, David Lammy's in the Middle East this week dealing with, meeting with representatives from there. She chose to leave. Not only did she choose to leave, she chose to stay beyond a chance when she could have got out and got back safely before the bitter end. So her fate lies solely in the hands of the Syrians and of the or of the Kurds. So. And also, if we bring her back, think about the sort of the trade-offs that's going to be required for that. Because look, this is a dangerous woman. Intelligence leaked, says that she was, an active fighter. She carried an AK-47. She was alleged to have stitched suicide bombers into the vests. She was, this was no blushing ISIS bride. No. This was someone who was actively, participating in the fight against the West in the ISIS fight. She denies that, but she also says, "Oh well, no one can prove it anyway." So she would have to be guarded not only for public safety in case she, turned back to her ISIS ways, but also would have to be guarded for her own safety because people will want to, exact revenge on her, and she will need to be protected. Now, who's going to make the decision of, well, which MI5 agents and which officers and which security officials are going to be designated to Shamima Begum, rather than fighting, the massive Islamist threat that we have to counter every day? They're tackling far-right extremism. MI5 are being drafted in now to help smash people smuggling gangs. Our security services are already stretched to breaking point, and what we're essentially saying is, dozens of officers would have to be diverted from the day-to-day fight against terrorism to protect this numpty.
Yeah, absolutely right. A week to go until the inauguration of Donald Trump, 47th President of the United States of America. It's going to be a fascinating year, obviously. You're also writing this morning about the relationship between Keir Starmer, the British government, and the incoming Trump administration. How do you see it sort of panning out in the first few weeks?
Well, obviously, we've had this weird transition phase which America has, but I can't in two minds whether it's a good idea. In Britain, we just basically have a general election, make our politicians go hell for leather around the country for 6 weeks, and then when they're at maximum peak exhaustion, give them their hands to the nuclear codes and ask them to make a cabinet and set up a new administration. The Americans do it a little bit differently, where they have they string it out over about a month and a half. So, next week, Trump's finally in. Now, look, Number 10 trip over themselves to say, look, the personal relationship between Starmer has been very warm, it's good, it's professional, they had dinner, they're WhatsApp buddies, all of that. But, behind the scenes, obviously, the delicate relationship between the Trump administration and the British government, things haven't been quite so rosy. And obviously the appointment of Peter Mandelson, not necessarily because it was Peter Mandelson, but how it was done went down very badly, I hear. And in fact, that senior figures who will be running the White House next week found out from Twitter that Britain had appointed a new ambassador rather than being told, which went down badly because they had a pretty good relationship with Dame Karen Pierce, the current ambassador. And I think some phone calls went ignored. The National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell, was trying to get in touch and found his phone calls ringing out, which is not a great place for Britain to be in the so-called special relationship. But all sorts of efforts being made to patch things up. But a bit of a rocky start, shall we say?
Yeah, I think so. Harry, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Harry Cole, political editor of The Sun there. He's got a column in the paper today and every Monday, of course, on page 10. Let's get a quick call from Stephen in Manchester. Stephen.
How you doing, mate?
Good, sir.
Who doesn't love Harry Cole, by the way?
Hey?
Anyway, I love Harry Cole.
Yeah, he's a good man. Top man.
Listen,
what can I do for you?
Tips. Defrosting the freezer, right?
Yeah, go on.
Turn the fridge off. Take your food out of the freezer part. So I've got 3 shelves on mine, right?
Yeah.
It's really quick and concise, this. Tupperware tubs, you can use ceramics. Who cares, right?
Right.
Boiling water. Close the door.
Yeah.
The fridge is off.
Right.
The ice melts straight away. Then you wipe it out, sanitize it. Now, also, I remember you last year going on about food waste stinking in your house.
Yeah.
Right. What you do is, with your freezer, we have these biodegradable bags in Manchester.
Oh, yeah.
And what you do is you put a little shelf to the side in your freezer, and when you've got some, I don't know, egg, bacon rashers, whatever, sprouts, who eats sprouts, by the way, and then what you do is you put it in the fridge, right, and it freezes, and it doesn't stink.
Well, what do you do with it then?
Once a week they come round, don't they, and you throw it in your recycling bin, and Bob's a good one.
No, because they've given me a special box to put it in. That's the point.
Yeah, no, but do you know what? I live by the Meadows in Urmston, right, in Manchester, and I caught a house mouse, and I put it in this little box. It ate through the plastic, mate. The box is a waste of time. Get rid of it.
Yeah,
Just
I think
put it in the freezer.
I just use an ice bucket. You know,
I know,
champagne
but
in
just
it.
put it in the freezer, honestly, like you do, like your weekly.
Yeah, I've got room in my freezer for garbage that I don't want to keep, though, have I?
Yeah, just put it in there.
Yeah.
It doesn't stink. That's the whole point.
Yeah, but I just chuck it away and then throw it in the bin, and it doesn't stink either.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right,
I don't want to save the planet, Stephen. I just want to have a freezer that works. Thank you very much, though, for your advice. Apparently, I can use some boiling water in and some Tupperware, and that will get rid of it. Yeah, but I still have to empty all the food out first. So I'm on a sort of mission. I'll have to eat all the food in the freezer first before I defrost it, which could take a while because there's a lot in there. Anyway, let's get a voice note from Carl on AI.
Hi, Mike. I think, Carl from Telford here, I think AI is actually going to take over Parliament and the House of Lords. We'll get better results everywhere then. They'll save a shed load of money from payments and then just use AI to do what they can't do. Think. Ha! Cheers,
Yeah,
Mike.
Very
Great
good.
day.
Yeah, think and actually think on their feet and actually be creative. That might be good. I don't think you could create a creative AI unless you're yourself creative. Can you? Coming up, we're going to talk some more about Shamima Begum. Alan Duncan is here. He's been out to the refugee camps of Syria to film what's going on out there, and he knows a thing or two about Shamima Begum because he's been tracking that story for a very, very long time indeed. We'll talk some more about freezers, washing machines, why we don't even understand our own washing machines, by the way. Everybody only uses one setting because it's the only one they understand. What chance has AI got, for heaven's sake? This is Talk.
obviously been going into them since 2019. So I've been in. I've almost lost count how many times I've been into them camps and prisons, to be honest.
Right. And do they look any different this time than the last time you were there?
Yeah, there's definitely a difference. I can't say too much at the minute because there's something actually going to be released in the Sun, which is quite explosive, but it's going to give you a sort of truer insight into what's going on across there.
Right.
I've known this for a long time, and I saw what I saw in 2019. I'm actually seeing now. IS think they're about to be freed.
And are they?
At the moment, you've got Turkish-backed jihadist groups, SNA and what have you, in Turkey, attacking the Kurds. The Turks, HTS, and the SNA. Bear in mind, HTS, SNA are full of so-called ex-ISIS and Al-Qaeda.
Right.
So they want control of the camps. Ask yourself why they want control of them camps.
Well, I mean, and presumably with all of these different groups with different ideals and, you know, different sort of positions on various things, one of them's going to end up on top, aren't they?
One of them is. However, there's still obviously a lot of talks to go on. You've obviously got the Americans in northeast Syria at the minute. Bear in mind that the Kurdish SDF, they fought against ISIS from day one, Mike. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're the ones that defeated ISIS on the ground. They're the ones that have been keeping 60,000 plus ISIS in prisons and camps. And by the way, they're not refugee camps. They're full of ISIS.
Yeah.
The refugee camps comes from these NGOs, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? But they're ISIS camps.
Right.
They're not.
So there's a lot of ISIS. There's still a lot of ISIS individuals in that part of the world, then.
Oh yeah. Obviously, I've always called the likes of Al Hol the last of the caliphate, but the start of the next caliphate. And that's for a reason, because in there, they are as loyal to ISIS now as the day they went and joined.
As they ever were, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We've got a clip, actually, Alan. I'm just going to show this. This is you confronting Shamima Begum. Let's have a look.
Can you get out, please? I don't want to talk to you.
Can we talk to you?
No, get out.
Is that you, Shamima, yeah?
Yes, can you get out?
Can we speak to you?
No, I didn't say that you can come in here, get...
No, we're not in the tent, so we're outside. I'm from Britain as well. Are you missing Christmas in Britain? Oh, well, Merry Christmas. Another Christmas here,
She wasn't keen to see you, Alan.
She probably hates me more than any other journalist, because from day one, I've not been there to pity that. I've been there to expose her and all ISIS. Bear in mind, it started, I interviewed her husband. There were certain things he said in his interview that was that set me off. I knew straight away there was more, so I actually went looking. So I've got the witnesses.
Yeah.
I know she was in the training camps.
Yeah.
I know her mate was selling Yazidi women and children. How many times was Shamima and her husband in that house, and them Yazidi slaves were getting abused and been her slave in the house? Ask yourself that.
Yeah, exactly. And what do you make of what her situation is now? Because, you know, there's a conversation again being had here about should she be brought back, should she not? You know, I think the common thread seems to be at the moment, no, definitely not. But there are a few people who are starting to waver a little bit. I mean, would you say that she is still what you would call captured by ISIS? I mean, she hasn't changed, has she?
None of them have. This, again, goes back to the start, Mike. These people, right, I'll never forget, there was an ISIS woman, probably the most honest one I've ever had. Bear in mind, I've talked to a lot of ISIS on and off camera, and I'll never forget her saying, "Don't trust a word, they're conning you." But more importantly, Mike, I know of Yazidi slaves, including the one we rescued, that were actually held in Shamima Begum's camp at the very start when they all got captured. And they've confirmed to me many times, and this is more than one Yazidi, they were like, yeah, the Westerners are sitting there and they're saying, yeah, up here we're still ISIS, but we'll show our face, we'll do the pity me. And there's something actually, again, this is connected to this trip over Christmas. There's going to be some stuff that's going to, some stuff coming up in this Sun piece that's going to be going into that side.
Yeah.
Yous are going to be, I'm not shocked because I've heard it so many times, but again, you know, who's better than to get people on the ground that have been dealing with these people for years? Who better to speak to or get them to speak to you than the people looking after that are holding the ISIS pigs?
Yeah, of course. And what I mean, they're sort of prisoners in this camp, aren't they? As you said, they're being watched over because they are all ISIS. What are the conditions actually like? I mean, we saw the tent there. Difficult to know what she's got in the tent, but I mean, she looks healthy enough whenever we see pictures of her.
So, again, this comes down to the NGOs and the Pity Me Brigade and certain media. They've been saying for years the conditions in these camps are atrocious, they're terrible, they're all this. Well, I'll tell you what, I've been into plenty of camps across there that have been holding Yazidi victims who lost their homes. And I'm telling you, them camps are in a really good condition. They're not, you know, they're getting fed. You see yourself. They've got tents. They're, you know, they're very comfortable, let's just say.
Right.
More comfortable than, personally, I believe that they should be.
Right.
But hey,
well, certainly more comfortable
me, you know?
than the people they're responsible for murdering, anyway.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is, you know, Shamima's been given. I mean, you've seen that little tiny clip there. However, I actually go walking in and around. Her tent is smack bang in the middle of other. You know, it's in a. That she's been attacked. She's under threat. I've been in them camps when they've been murdering people, Mike. I've stood over bodies of women and children that have been murdered by ISIS in them camps. Trust me on this. If they want you dead in them camps, you would be gone that night.
Right.
No ifs. Out for her.
Yeah, I know.
She is a perpetrator, not a victim. ISIS are perpetrators, not victims. Isn't it about time we focused on the actual victims, the 2,600 Yazidi women and children who are still missing, that were sold and raped by her lot?
Yes.
Isn't it time we focused on the victims and not the ISIS pigs like her?
Yeah.
She gets back, they all get back. And you were right, Mike. These people will not they won't stand trial when they get here to Britain. I think it was the previous. They will not stand, and they know that.
Yes, of course they do. Listen, Alan, it's great to talk to you. We'll look forward to the next piece in The Sun. No question at all, as you say, that the Yazidi women who were kidnapped and raped and killed, there won't be any marches for them on Free Palestine Day, will there? Because, of course, the Hafidis don't care about the Yazidis. They only care about one thing, and that's all they can see. Thanks very much indeed to Alan Duncan there. We'll be playing more of his clips over the course of this week. This is Morning Glory. More coming up next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:50. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Peter says this, with AI, you will call 999 and be met with an automated voice, and then AI will decide whether you need emergency help. But will it hesitate due to people's age, etc.? I think it's dangerous. One here from Peter. Good morning, Mike. Starmer announces today plans to unleash AI into the UK economy. We have no electricity for energy-intensive AI data centres after a near blackout last week. Miliband's energy strategy and pricing aren't capable or viable. More evidence of a lack of joined-up thinking on growth. I think that's a good point. We'll come back to the AI conversation in a little while. Right now, though, I've been saying that this year, led by the reappointment, the re-election of Donald Trump as President of the United States of America, is going to be a kind of a rebirth of common sense. It's going to be the year of common sense. Sharon Davis is with us, MBE, of course, Olympic medalist, swimmer and author, campaigner, hero, heroine, whatever. I mean, he, she, me, Lee, blah. One piece of good news, finally, Sharon. Civil servants will no longer be labelled transphobic for expressing gender-critical beliefs under new guidelines. This follows Facebook also saying, over in America, that if you call somebody who's trans you won't have the police knocking on your door and they won't take it down.
Yeah, absolutely. This is to do with the Equality Act of 2010 and the fact that it's been misrepresented, particularly by Stonewall now, for absolutely years. And for me, it's very relevant because this is a case that was brought by Eleanor Francis. She was a civil servant in the DCMS, so the Digital Culture, Media and Sport. Yeah. So the word sport really resonates with me. Sure. And it was the fact that they were compelling civil servants to basically call men women. And even though the protected characteristic of sex and belief in religion is part of those protected characteristics, they were not allowing those people to have those beliefs. And people like myself who were just trying to get fair sport for our female athletes were labelled transphobic. And it started in 2022. Yesterday, this amazing lady won this out-of-court tribunal. And those governing bodies are going to go back and reassess the gender assignment policies by the end of 2025. Now, what's really disturbing about this is that, from my perspective, I've been trying to get sport to recognise the science, which is undisputable and is peer-reviewed, and, everybody knows the common sense that you're talking about. Right. Then we've been thwarted by the fact that they're then referring to the DCMS, who are then putting this Stonewall version of the Equality Act in place and then pushing that onto the sports governing bodies. So I hope now, like you say, 2025 is a year where common sense is going to return a little bit. And for me, it's been a huge crusade to just say, look, women and girls deserve fair and safe sport based on science. But it's a lot bigger than that, obviously. Yeah. People have lost their jobs because they basically are not prepared to say that, human beings can change sex, which we know they can't. Right. And isn't it ridiculous how much time is wasted on all this stuff as well? Because according to a statement from Susanna Story and Sarah Munby, the permanent secretaries of those two departments, we are committed to fostering a tolerant and respectful working culture. As such, our departments are working together to introduce a revised gender reassignment policy informed by a new central model policy, which we anticipate will be available by the end of the year. So another year will pass before they've actually physically got a policy that somebody can refer to. But again, they use these kind of phrases, don't they? That we wish to kind of foster tolerance, that we are committed to making sure that the working culture is respectful. Well, it's not very respectful to women if you walk into a toilet and there's a bloke there standing up having a pee, is it? No, it really, really isn't. You're put in a no-win situation. And also, this was referring to self-ID. This wasn't even with gender certificates. So I think, £116,000 was awarded. They didn't go to court because they realised they were going to lose in court, so this was an out-of-court settlement. Right. And as you mentioned, this is taxpayers' money that's been used to fight. That's been a misrepresentation by Stonewall. And this isn't just governing bodies. This is thousands and thousands of organisations. This is banks. This is the National Health Service. This is hundreds of our British universities. They've been paying £3,000 a year to be part of this diversity scheme, to be sold an untruth with regards to how the law actually is. And they've been persecuting people if you don't walk around with pronoun badges. And, this has got to stop. And hopefully, as you say, 2025 will be a year when we see things change. And just basic common sense and respect for each other will return.
Yeah, you would like to think so. And Toby Young was involved as well with the Free Speech Union, supporting Ms Francis. He's doing some great stuff, isn't he, supporting some of these cases?
He is doing some amazing stuff, and I'm a member, and I would advise anyone, that is gender critical or that believes in common sense, that even if you don't need it, there'll be other people out there that are fighting battles like Eleanor for us to be able to get people to return to, basic common sense. So, keep up.
Absolutely right. Good to talk to you, Sharon. Thanks very much indeed. Sharon Davis, MBE, Olympic medalist swimmer and author, of course. The story being that common sense will now return, hopefully, to the civil service because they've been told by a tribunal they got it wrong. Completely and utterly wrong over gender reassignment. Let's face it. Let's talk to David, who's in Gloucestershire. Wants to talk about AI, I think. David, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Michael. How are we?
Very well indeed. What can I do for you, sir?
Well, I was just thinking with Keir Starmer or Starlin, none of us trust him. Look what he did with the people with the, if they sent the wrong messages on Facebook or whatever it was, and they locked them up. Yeah. Well, do you really think that they're going to use AI for good reason? No, they won't. They'll start locking people up or shutting people down. We sent a message last week to our local MP, where I'm in the Forest of Dean, to Matt Bishop, basically saying that we absolutely, we think he's disgraceful the way he voted, and, over this child sex gang.
Yes.
And then we had an email come back through saying they want our address. And my wife said, yeah. And I said to my wife, I said, I'm not sending it. I said, the Stasi round to come and get it.
Was this the MP's office that said they wanted your address?
Yeah. And I said, they'll send the Stasi round to get us.
But on which grounds did they say they wanted your address?
Well, they said it was so that it could go into the proper records and be sort of used.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I said, no way.
Yeah, right.
I said, there's no way we're sending it. They'll send, like I said, they'll come and get us.
Yeah.
And my missus started, I could use a different word, but, she wasn't very happy about it.
I'm not surprised.
She said, do you think they will? I said, I don't know. I don't trust them.
No, you can't. You shouldn't trust them. You're absolutely right not to trust them. I know. It's ridiculous. David, listen, thanks for your call. Here's one from Jane who says, Mike, how would you tell if Starmer and Reeves have been taken over by robots? And Dean says in Solihull, do you think 2-tier is already an early version of AI that isn't intelligent yet? Think about his robotic Christmas tree countdown and his sausages glitch at the conference. I think that's a good point. He might be the sort of, the first version of a robot, an AI prime minister. We're fixing the foundations. Let's get a voice note from Andy.
Good morning, Mike. Andy in Portsmouth. First voice note of the year from me. Just listening to your guest, you're talking to about the Labour Party not wanting to do any business with Trump, etc., because they, think he's a racist, blah blah. Well, they thought racists and rapists were okay because they seem to brush it under the carpet in this country. So, they're all a bunch of charlatans as far as I'm concerned, full of double standards.
Yeah, absolutely full of double standards. I mean, the only thing that's consistent about them is their inconsistency. And today, of course, we've got the government launching themselves at this AI business. Nobody knows why. Nobody knows what it's about. They claim they're going to raise 470 billion quid. They don't tell us how or when that's going to happen. Carol in Shoreham by Sea says, this morning, Mike, loving the show as always, especially with your very encouraging view that you think there's a possibility that this disastrous government might collapse due to its complete incompetence. Well, we can only hope. I've never known a worse shower running and ruining our country in my lifetime, and I'm running out of suitable adjectives to describe them. I will get a self-defrosting freezer next time because, yes, it is a pain. Thanks for keeping us sane. Apparently you can get a self-defrosting freezer, but I don't have one of those, so therefore I can't help myself with that. So I'm going to have to maybe take the view that I had earlier from a caller who said stick some boiling water in and just wait for it all to thaw. Sounds like a bit of a flood to me, that. I don't know. We'll be back after the news.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 2 minutes past 9. I'm Mike Graham. We're into the final hour of the show. The sun is up. It's not as cold today as it's been over the past few days, so the thaw will begin. I dare say that will mean that up in the north of England there will be floods, because that's what normally happens, because, of course, they won't have bothered to clean the drains. But we'll come back to that in a moment. We're going to be joined later by Isabel Oakeshott in this hour. Andrew Griffith MP, Shadow Business Secretary, is here as well. Rachel Reeves still in China. We believe she's on her way back soon, if not already. She's come back with a pretty poor deal. 600 million quid the Chinese have given to the UK government over 5 years. That's 120 million per year. 60 times less than Indonesia got, 40 times less than Hungary got, 30 times less than Peru got. Nobody really knows why Rachel Reeves went there, but the front page of the Times suggests that she's trying to sell out Britain's economic energy transfer. She wants to basically get the Chinese to invest in all manner of renewable energy scenarios. She wants to have wind farms built, wind turbines, solar panels, all brought in by the Chinese. Even the former head of MI6 is saying that might not be such a great idea when it comes to national security. But because old crazy Ed Miliband has decided that net zero is the most important thing in the world, doesn't care about national security, doesn't matter. He says just bring it in, as long as they're doing something good for saving the planet, that's the main thing. Over in California, Meghan and Harry are getting it in the neck. Justin Bateman, a star of Family Ties with Michael J. Fox many years ago, has called Harry and Meghan disaster tourists for going down to the scene of where the fires were happening, putting their arms around people, looking miserable, you know, supposedly handing out clothes and food to them, and saying, we're just here to help. You know, of course they're not. Also, she's managed to delay the release of her new Love Meghan TV show on Netflix because she says it might clash with the people who are feeling so bad about the fires in California. 24 people have died, and all Meghan Markle can think about is her own show. That pretty much tells you exactly what you need to know. 0344 499 1000. 500,000 people have waited more than 12 hours on trolleys in A&Es. That's the front page of the Daily Mail. And for heaven's sake, a nurse has been stabbed in an A&E unit in Oldham. There's a man who's been arrested for that. We'll bring you news on that as well. Coming up also this morning, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, is going to unveil his new AI revolution strategy. I can't wait. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Do you remember when he didn't actually run the country and he said this?
We've prepared this party for government. We've prepared all of our departments for government. If we are privileged to come in to serve our country, it will be public service for me, as it always has been, not self-entitlement.
Public service for me, as it always has been, not self-entitlement. That was before we knew about Lord Ali, the free glasses, the free clothes, the free hotels, the free houses, the free apartments, the free holidays. I mean, absolutely incredible stuff, isn't it? That was Keir Starmer then. This is him now. It's all gone horribly wrong. This is Morning Glory. Well, there's only one thing to do, and that's to talk to Andrew Griffith, MP, Shadow Business Secretary. Andrew, very good morning to you. Welcome.
Good morning, Mike. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you very much indeed. I can't imagine things going any worse for Keir Starmer, really. That was a little speech he made before, I think, a couple of days before he won the election, in which he declared that not only were they hoping to win, but they were ready, should they win, with all guns blazing. Everything had been fully costed. Everything was planned. They had a plan. It now looks as though that was all an absolute crock of nonsense.
Well, I think it's worse than that, Mike. I think they did have a plan, and the plan they had was one they cooked up in the student union bar in the 1970s, because that's what they're taking our economy back to. Yeah. So, you know, they've literally ground out any growth that was there in the economy. They inherited an economy that was growing well, one of the fastest growing in the G7. As you know, in the last couple of quarters, no growth at all. Today, we've seen more devastating statistics out from business, which mean people are going to either lose their job or not get a job if they're trying to desperately find one. Pensioners have been shivering with cold over this weekend because Rachel took away their winter fuel allowance, and it just goes from bad to worse. So every decision they've taken, every choice that they've made, we mustn't let them off the hook. They have made choices, but all of those choices have taken this country in the wrong direction.
Well, exactly right. And as Rachel Reeves returns from China, the new mantra in Downing Street is going to be, oh, OK, so all of those things that we did don't appear to have made any difference, except they've just made the economy worse. It hasn't raised the money we hoped. We're now borrowing more than ever. So now what we're going to do is go to Whitehall and ask for a load of savage savings from civil service departments. Well, that's not going to happen, is it?
No, and the one thing you know is that ordinary people are going to pay the price, whether it's their education, their social care, whether the police, it's frontline services, whatever Whitehall say, when the cap gets passed around, it's the front line, it's never the middle managers, the top bosses in Whitehall or in town halls that pay the price. It's just not credible, is it? I mean, here we've got a government that is trying to pay Mauritius nearly £9 billion of taxpayers' money to take away our sovereign territory because David Lammy and Keir Starmer believe that their student politics brand of decolonialism is all that matters.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes no sense at all. If she wants to take hard choices, the first place she should look is reversing her own Labour budget measures that have broken the economy, and worse, things like the trade union-inspired employment bill that's going to absolutely give employers the chills.
Absolutely right. And you must be concerned as the Shadow Business Secretary, because every business organisation that you see speaking, whether it's the CBI, whether it's other business organisations, they're all saying that, you know, the circumstances that the economy is now in is going to mean that there's no hiring going on in the near future. There's going to be very little kind of, shall we say, development, research and development going on because nobody's really got any confidence. They're not sure they're going to have the money. They're certainly not going to be doing anything other than just trying to kind of handle the increasing costs that they've got without having to pass them on. And inevitably, they will pass them on.
Every day, and there's another slew of surveys out this morning, but every day reveals that businesses are struggling. They're pulling back on hiring decisions. They're not able to invest. Some of them are looking to sadly go overseas or invest more overseas to escape this socialist government. We're in a big hole, Mike, as a country, and it's a hole because of self-inflicted choices this government's made. They really don't get it. Not a single person who sits around the cabinet table has got real business experience. They don't understand that it's business that creates jobs, it's business that creates prosperity, and that then gives you the ability to grow the economy. And if you need to fund those public services. They've got it completely the wrong way round. It's a real worry.
It really is. And even the Treasury now is starting to make noises that she may be in breach of the agreements that she was supposed to do about sticking to the new fiscal rules, right? And not actually borrowing.
She fiddled her own rules. She literally made up her own rules. It doesn't get less competent than this. She's made up her own fiddled rules, and now it looks like she's going to miss even those. But who's going to pay the price? Not Rachel Reeves, not Keir Starmer. We are all going to pay the price in an economy that grows less fast and that takes services away from ordinary people.
Yeah, and just one final one, because, I mean, it looks as though the skids are under Rachel Reeves. I don't think she's going to last possibly until beyond March, if that, certainly not beyond June, which would mean that, you know, it's a pretty poor state of affairs that you lose your, you know, supposedly brilliant Chancellor within the first year of government. But it also looks now as though the rather laughably called anti-corruption minister, Tulip Siddiq, has got the skids under her as well, after there's been so many stories written about her connections to her corrupt family who were running Bangladesh like some kind of gangster nation.
Mike, don't make me choose. There are so many Labour ministers, I think, who are doing a bad job, whether it's David Lammy trying to give away our territory, Rachel Reeves devastating our economy, Yvette Cooper failing to deter migrants coming to these shores. So please don't make me choose. The reason I'm a Conservative, the reason I think Kemi Badenoch is the best candidate to be the Prime Minister of this country is because I think we would run this country more competently. We would make better decisions. Decisions are always difficult. We would make better decisions because we understand what it takes, the role of the private sector and business to run an economy that will deliver services to ordinary folk.
I mean, certainly there'll be plenty of people that would disagree with the Tories running the country well, but certainly you run the economy well, that's for sure. Andrew, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Andrew Griffith, Shadow Business Secretary, Tory MP there, of course, as well. Reports in, by the way, that Keir Starmer met the Awami League boss, who's linked to Tulip Siddiq and her dictator auntie, just last month, which would be extraordinary. Let's talk to Isabel Oakeshott, who I'm pretty sure won't agree with Andrew Griffith that Kemi Badenoch's probably the best person to run the country. Very good morning to you, Isabel.
Hi, I thought you were a little bit generous to Andrew there, saying, you know, the Conservatives ran the economy well. A lot of people were going to disagree with that, not least because it was under the Conservatives. Let's not forget that taxes rose to their highest levels in 70 years, and we didn't exactly have boom time, did we? Unfortunately, what came next was even worse.
But it does feel, that's the problem, it feels like that. It feels as though that was a very much better time already.
Well, I think we've not had any worse time than we're in now, if we could put it that way. And how do we get out of this desperate doom loop? Certainly, I'm not putting my faith in Darren Jones, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, who's written the lamest piece I can recall reading in recent times by any senior minister in one of today's papers. Each and every sentence has some cliche. Let me read you out a few. They're going to roll up their sleeves, apparently. They're going to have leaving no stone unturned. That's what they're going to do. And apparently there's no silver bullet. Each and every part of this article, which is all about how they're going to cut government waste, is just a load of old tripe. We've all heard it all before. And how can they look voters in the eye and say they're going to cut government waste when there are so many outrageous examples of government waste every day, and they've been in power for, I don't know how, honestly, it feels like an eternity, doesn't it? But since last July. Yeah,
it really does. Well, I take no notice of him ever since the last time I saw, well, the first time I think I saw him on TV, he was on with Laura Kunsberg some months ago, and I looked him up, and he's married to a net zero consultant and technology entrepreneur who co-founded the renewable energy company Village Infrastructure. He became a vegan in 2014 for reasons related to carbon emissions and agriculture. Sorry, mate, that puts you completely in the box for mad, nutty, frog-like people who I'm not interested in hearing from.
It was over before it even started, wasn't it, Mike, your relationship with Darren Jones? I remember reading similar. I was on some BBC political show with him, I guess a year or so ago, and I looked up and reached the same conclusion that we probably weren't going to have any kind of meeting of minds. No, and that's the trouble, though. This entire government is full of people like him, you know, who have come from... He's got a legal background, I think. We've got somebody like Steve Reed, who's the Environment Secretary, who basically used to run Lambeth Council. You know, we've got people demonstrating, farmers demonstrating all weekend this weekend. We've heard nothing whatsoever from the government about it. It's just almost as though they think if they keep ignoring something, it will go away. You know, they ignore the grooming gangs, they hope it will go away. They ignore the economy, they hope it will go away. They ignore the NHS, hope it goes away. Farmers, pensioners, you know, parents. It's just the list is endless. Well, just one problem. The one group that is definitely not going to go away is known as the electorate, the voters. And the more that they annoy, you know, one group of voters after another, there's not going to be that many people left who are still believing in the Labour cause. And as Andrew Griffith said earlier in your interview, you know, don't make me choose between which minister or department is being most incompetent, because there's just too much of an embarrassment of riches, although sadly not for our economy. It's really interesting that now Labour insiders are beginning to brief against Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, and as you say, her days do seem to be a little bit numbered. I think that the Prime Minister will be incredibly reluctant to give her up. Because it will be such a totemic admission of failure. You know, as you were saying earlier in the show, what a fuss she made, you know, how vainglorious, putting up all these pictures of herself and going on about being the first female Chancellor of the Exchequer, you know, making a fuss about having a special loo, blah, blah. and then to effectively have presided over this total disaster is so embarrassing. So he is going to try everything he can, the Prime Minister, to hold on to Rachel Reeves, because to lose your Chancellor within the first few months of a new administration, and let's not bother rehashing what happened with Liz Truss, but is incredibly undermining for your whole authority, I would say.
But isn't it interesting that an awful lot of people have pointed this out to me recently, that, you know, Liz Truss gets the blame for that budget. She was the Prime Minister, Kwasi Kwarteng was the Chancellor. Keir Starmer doesn't appear to be getting the blame for Rachel Reeves' budget, which is called Rachel Reeves' budget.
It's because it's the establishment, isn't it? You know, they're just not going to admit it. I mean, it's amazing how many people you talk to on the left who try to blame everything that's happening now with the economy still on Liz Truss. I mean, it's completely economically illiterate to do that. And, you know, the bottom line is they're not going to get this growth that they go on about when they continue to tax people to the hill and spend as if there's no tomorrow. It's the welfare budget they need to look at. I mean, it was just... there's an interesting story in today's Telegraph about 9 out of 10 of disability claims being assessed remotely, because guess what? Civil servants are working from home. Well, that's an absolute recipe for abuse, isn't it?
Well, it absolutely is, and I'm happy to say that partially because Donald Trump has come into power, you've basically now got... American companies, big American companies, JP Morgan, telling their staff they need to come back 5 days a week. You know, the working from home days are over. The blended working is over. You know, America's going to lead the way here, and they've got an awful lot of people around the world who are going to be told exactly the same thing. Some of them are in London. And I see this as the year of common sense if things go well.
Well, I'd like to see it as a year in which I stop getting email replies that have underneath the person's name, "Please note my working hours are," and then they proceed to explain just how often they're actually not working. Right. I mean, you know, no wonder we're not a booming economy if people are basically only ever part-time. And moreover, even if they are part-time, because, of course, there's a case for part-time working, and particularly for parents of young children, it's an attitude thing, isn't it? To have that on your out-of-office auto-reply basically says that you don't want to be bothered when you're not technically on duty. Right. Well, no one ever became a millionaire with that attitude, and neither does a country become a booming economy with that attitude, where people just think they can clock on and clock off, and anything that happens outside their stipulated working hours is someone else's problem.
Yeah, I mean, I've never understood that attitude in any way, shape or form, because it's so kind of ridiculous. It's like, if you want to work like that, then you should get a job in a shop, right, and sit at the till, and you only have to work while you're there, and then when you leave the shop and you're no longer at the till, then you can forget about your job. But in any kind of job that involves, you know, what you might call, you know, a successful business, decisions that have to be made 24/7 around the clock, you know, you can't just claim that you're not working. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's just not going to lead you to climbing the ladder, is it? That's the bottom line. No. Now, I feel this conversation is getting a bit heavy, Mike. And can we just talk about washing machines? Because just before I came on, I had some washing to do, and it occurred to me that I really don't know any other cycle other than the express cycle. And who the heck wants to put their washing on for 3 hours? Who does that?
Well, exactly.
So
but
I think we need a word.
This is my favourite. Yeah, we do. This is my favourite story of the day. It's a survey that says that 28% consider the washing machine the most confusing piece of household tech. 47% of people use the same program every time, which is inevitably the quick wash, which is what I do. Yeah. You know, you put it on. I think it's about 30 minutes. It comes out more or less dry because it's a washer dryer. I put it if I need to put anything, if I need to hang anything up, you can still do that, because there's nothing worse. When I was married, one of the reasons I'm no longer married. My wife used to hang clothes everywhere. You know, I'd come home from work, lived in this house in Wiltshire, and there'd be clothes sort of over the back of chairs, over radiators. I'd be like, what are you doing? You know, why don't you just put them in on the dryer?
Yeah, you don't want your house to look like some Bangladeshi balcony, do you?
No, you really don't. And I mean,
that is what they look like in these.
But I mean, it comes to ovens. 21% find timer settings the most confusing.
What are they?
I mean, I once locked I've got a quite expensive cooker now, and I once locked it by mistake, and I couldn't unlock it, and I just wanted to cook some. I was like, well, I don't know how you do this. I went and stayed in a very nice house in Montenegro last summer, and they had a Gaggenau cooker, which apparently cost thousands and thousands of pounds. Couldn't make it work at all. Had to go on YouTube with my son, who's much better at these kind of things than I am, to work out how to, scramble some eggs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite in favour of just on and off. That helps me a lot. And as for the washing machine, the compartment where you're supposed to put in the powder or liquid, even at my age, I still don't know which side does it go in.
No, why does it have a divider in it? It all goes down the same hole.
They don't have that in cars, do they? One bit for your pre-petrol and one bit for your petrol softener.
Actually, they do. I once had a diesel Land Rover, and you had to put two because you had to put the what do you call it, the blue whatever it is stuff in one side and the diesel in the other side. But anyway, what about defrosting a freezer? Have you got any advice for me on that?
Yeah, get the towels ready, because it always creates an absolute lake in my house, And also, like, hammering away at it, you're going to hurt your fingers. Yeah. It's just a job that everyone absolutely hates, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. But, I mean, sooner or later, I'm not going to be able to open the top drawer, you see. So
that's the thing. You always put it off, don't you, until you actually have to ram the fish fingers into the tiny
I'll end up doing. I'll probably end up cutting a hole in the drawer so that I can get my hand in it.
In the iceberg.
Exactly. Well, listen, that was far more interesting.
I think we can just talk about this all day.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, we should definitely do a white goods podcast with Isabel Oakeshott and Mike Graham. We could do that.
I love it.
Good to talk to you. Our international editor. I was going to ask you about Tulip Sadiq, but I can't be bothered now. Isabel Oakeshott, thank you very much indeed. This is, of course, the home of common sense, and any and all advice very, very welcome. But it's true. You don't know any other part of your washing machine. If anybody does, actually, if you're sort of, anally retentive enough to know exactly what each of the washing machine positions does, and you actually do that, I'd love to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. This from Glynis, who says, Mike, regarding your freezer, empty it. Get the hairdryer on it, full blast. I know you have one because your hair is coiffured every morning. Half an hour or less, then put the food back in. What are you going to do with all the water? I mean... This is the thing. It's not easy, this. Barry says this, when a country goes to the IMF for support, it is given with conditions. In the past, these conditions did not promote growth, involved being tied in on tax changes and interest rates. If we go cap in hand to the IMF, things will get worse, not better. Well, it certainly didn't really work, I don't think, for that Labour government when Jim Callaghan had to go there, or had to send his Chancellor, rather, Dennis Healey, because they ended up losing the next election anyway. It was an absolute nightmare. 24 minutes past 9. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Got this from Robert in Nottingham. It says, right, buy another freezer. Transfer food in old freezer to new one. Defrost old freezer, rinse and repeat as required. Call me for any other household tips. Yeah, very good. Thank you very much indeed. I'm now sorry I mentioned it, to be honest. I'm getting so many ideas, none of which I'm sure are any good. Let's get a voice note from Paul.
Hi, Mark. Paul from Stoke here. In relation to your caller just who said that he emailed his MP and they wanted his address. I did the same. I emailed my MP and the police knocked on my door yesterday, counter-terrorism police, to tell me that what I'd said to him regarding the grooming gang scandal was a very fine line between committing a crime and not committing a crime. Just be careful with these MPs, especially the Labour ones, folks.
Blimey, that is extraordinary. I'd like to hear more from that on that, Paul. Could you perhaps let us know what it was that you wrote? Because I think people will be very concerned to hear that. You've sent a letter to your MP asking for information or perhaps urging that the MP gets involved in a grooming gang vote, possibly that they should vote for a grooming gang inquiry, and you get visited by the police? Seriously? Let's talk to Lord Tariq Ahmed, British businessman, Conservative Life peer. Lord Tariq, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Good to meet you.
Yeah, good to talk to you. I'm sorry I can't give you more details on that note from Paul, but it sounds a bit disturbing that you write a letter to an MP. We had one caller earlier who said they were asked for their address when they did that. He's saying that he got a visit from the police on some kind of counter-terrorism investigation.
Yeah, I fundamentally, it's flawed, isn't it? I mean, if someone is concerned about something, the police are there to protect everyone. And if someone is highlighting a particular issue in a particular part of the country, it needs to be fully investigated. And these calls for a national inquiry, which I do support, because I think what has happened, you can do both things in parallel. What's there already, implement it, and stop calling out people being racist because they're concerned about these abhorrent and vile crimes which are taking place and are affecting young, vulnerable girls.
Yeah. No, but I mean, certainly the inference I got from Paul anyway on that was that the police were not investigating the crime. They were investigating whether he had committed a crime by writing a letter.
Yeah, well, I think he needs to follow that up. I mean, like you, I don't know the full instance of that. And I hope he does take it up with his MP. MPs are there. As you said in your introduction, you know, I served in government for a good period of time, the last 12 years in the Conservative administration. And I regarded my time in the upper house as being someone who was representative of the whole country. But MPs are there specifically to serve their constituents, irrespective of who their constituent voted for. And I hope he will follow up with his MP.
Yeah, I mean, there's an awful lot of what I would regard as bluster around this issue, isn't there? You know, some people are being accused of sort of, you know, ratcheting up the grooming gang story for their own purposes. People are accused of trying to make a name for themselves. But the fact remains, it is a massive scandal, and something must be done. You said you supported an inquiry. I mean, a lot of different kinds of inquiries have been suggested. Yeah. What kind of inquiry do you think there should be?
Well, the thing is, when you look at what's already been done, the J inquiry, it was pretty comprehensive in certain respects, but there's a clear issue here with grooming gangs. And I think what we need now is to ensure those recommendations, which many were being taken forward by the previous administration. Let's not forget, in 2023, there was specific units set up with the police. There were 500 perpetrators who were actually caught. There were about over 4,000 or 5,000 victims who were supported. And I think that's the heart of it, Mike. You've got to put the victims at the heart of what we do. And that includes those people who are not only survive these abhorrent ordeals, but can actually come forward and actually be part and parcel of trying to find the support they need. You know, if I can just draw a comparison, I said I served in government previously, whilst I was the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs. One of the areas I looked after was on preventing sexual violence in conflict zones. The heart of our approach there was not to stop, was to listen to the victims, listen to the survivors, put them at the heart of the strategy, but also important, the actions we were taking. And that was really informing myself as the minister responsible, but also ensuring there were practical solutions offered to those who need it most, which are the survivors of these abhorrent crimes. And I agree with you. I don't think this is a case of just because someone supports a national inquiry that somehow they're a racist or indeed calling out a particular community or faith. It's about getting to the core and nub of the problem, and that's why I support something which is really focused on the grooming gangs to get the evidence base there so we can act beyond what is already being done.
Yeah, because one of the things that people do say has been a failing is that the victims weren't listened to. In many cases, victims went to the police and were completely ignored, and their cases weren't investigated. I mean, we've spoken to victims whose perpetrators never, ever were arrested and were never brought to justice. And so there's an awful lot that needs to be kind of, I suppose, cleaned up around the whole issue for the last 20-odd years.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, when you look at the inquiry, it put a 3-year limit on this. I, again, draw a comparison to an area that I worked in with victims of sexual violence in conflict zones. You know, if you've been a victim of any crime, I remember years and years ago, I was a victim of crime myself in my own home when people broke in. You know, I was a kid at that time. I was only about 13 years old. But it takes a time. It takes a long time. You need the support of your immediate people around you, but also the courage to be able to speak out, and you need to create the conditions to ensure that happens, and that's exactly why I'm supportive of that particular recommendation. Let's remove the limits on the 3-year limit. Let's allow survivors to be able to, you know, rebuild their lives, but then come forward to ensure these criminals are held fully to account. And I think that's why I believe in this kind of parallel approach. Let's continue to ensure, as Professor Jay has said, implement what's already there, but that doesn't stop us from having a really focused inquiry across the country on these issues of grooming gangs. We have the structure set up. You know, we have police and crime commissioners. Let's appoint specialists. Let's ensure the people who are dealing with the kind of calls which are very sensitive often and very personal are actually trained up to afford the support that victims and survivors need. And that's crucial. And let's also appoint these survivors who are coming forward and have the capacity and willingness to take part to actually find the practical solutions, because if you've survived these abhorrent crimes, you're also well placed to inform government policy and indeed practical actions that need to be taken.
Sure. And why do you think Keir Starmer's so against the idea of having an inquiry?
Well, I mean, that's something for the Prime Minister to answer. I think, you know, it's not the right approach. It's almost bordering disingenuous when you say you can't have another sort of focused inquiry, which you know, there's people in the Labour Party who've said it, the likes of Andy Burnham, Harriet Harman, who I know extremely well. They've put forward ideas which I support, that they should be focused on the nub of the issue which now confronts us. Look, irrespective of who you are, where you are, our country is an incredible country. You know, I'm a really proud Brit. You know, I've also learned from my heritage and my faith, and we celebrate all of that. But irrespective of who you are, where you are, we need to not just call it out, but ensure there are practical measures in place and an evidence base so we can catch these criminals, hold perpetrators to account, and most importantly, put survivors first.
Yes, absolutely right. Well, let's see if pressure can be brought on Keir Starmer. There seems to be a belief that he's beginning to move his position slightly, as some of his MPs will have heard from their constituents over the course of the last few days, and maybe they will pressurise him to do so. Lord Tariq Ahmed, thank you very much indeed. British businessman and Conservative life peer. Let's get a voice note from Anna on contacting your MP.
Morning, Mike. Anna, sorry. Would you ask your viewers? I've just had a very similar experience to your last caller. I sent my views on the varying different things, but obviously the vote really annoyed me. And I've had a Labour councillor very aggressively. I've kept the messages, wanting to come round and see me, wanting to come round and talk to me. I'd be very interested if this is Labour's next tactic. Start singly, individually. If you have a view, contacting you to shut you up.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, we're going to have to look into this, because I think this is a story now for those of us here at Talk who believe in proper free speech, not the plastic free speech that Keir Starmer claims that he's interested in. That's now 3 different people who I've spoken to who have had interesting interactions, rather worrying interactions with politicians when you've asked them about grooming gang situations, and all presumably Labour MPs. Absolutely staggering what's going on. How about this? I don't understand what will stop Shamima Begum just getting on a boat and coming in the irregular way. We are just wasting time and even more money banging on about her. Mike, I'm sorry. Mike, you've used the wrong word there. When you say irregular, you mean illegal, don't you? Don't fall for the change of lexicon. It's illegal the way they come. It's not irregular. If Shamima Begum returns, says Jonathan, she'll be waiting for the Labour Party within 6 months. Yeah, probably right. And how about this from Kieran? Mike, Starmer's idea to make the UK a world leader in AI may seem good. However, he means actual incompetence. Yeah, I think you're right. 0344 499 1000. Coming up, we're going to talk about the BBC. Lisa Nandy apparently wants to do away with the licence fee, which, of course, didn't used to be the Labour position. But guess what? It gets worse. She doesn't want to do away with the licence fee and then make it a subscription-based service in order for you to pay for the bits that you want. No. No, what she wants to do is just make everybody pay a tax, which then pays for the BBC. So you will actually be worse. So even if you can't opt out of it then, it'll be a tax which will be given to the BBC. Absolutely extraordinary. 9:39.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:41. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here just before 10 to let us know what's coming up on her show, of course. One story we didn't mention on the NHS front, ambulance crews stuck at A&E missed thousands of 999 calls a day in England. This is on top of the other story, of course, which is that something like 12 million people 500,000 people waited over 12 hours in an A&E trolley, basically, before they could get seen. And they were in corridors. People are being changed and having dressings changed in corridors. People are not being moved from corridors. There are not enough beds. There's not enough rooms. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. But paramedics in England are unable to respond to 100,000 urgent 999 calls every single month because they are stuck outside hospitals waiting to hand over patients. And that's endangering thousands of lives. So whatever Keir Starmer thinks he's going to come up with his AI revolution, maybe he could generate some more ambulances and some more spaces in the hospitals to stop people facing life and death whenever they go down there. Absolutely incredible. Susan in Worthing says, "Morning, Mike. Just hearing Rachel Reeves is using an AI email reply service called Triage Information Technology. Sounds perfect for her if you use the acronym." Yeah, I see what you did there. Very good. And here's one from someone who doesn't give a name. Is Keir Starmer going to do the countdown for Jeff Bezos' rocket? 5, 4, 3... Oh, no, they've pulled it off. Yep, no, it didn't go. He was supposed to go at 7:30, then 7:45, call it off at 8:15. Sounds like a Labour policy. Just didn't fire. Rebecca Ryan is campaign director of Defund the BBC, because we're going to talk about that now. Over the weekend, Lisa Nandy was spotted doing the rounds on the airwaves, talking about how she wants to do away with the licence fee for the BBC, but instead of making that a good thing, she wants to make it a bad thing, because most people who want to do away with the licence fee say, yeah, change it to a subscription model. Just buy the bits of the BBC you want. Watch the sport if you want, watch the news if you want, listen to the radio if you want, but you don't have to pay a licence fee for all of it. She now says the best way to replace the licence fee is to actually make it a proper tax. So basically general taxation would be used to fund the BBC, which is about as bad of an idea as I've ever heard. Rebecca, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
They don't get it, do they? I mean, the idea of doing away with the licence fee is to do away with the compulsory nature of paying for something that you don't necessarily watch or listen to. This would be even worse, wouldn't it?
I mean, it's absolutely awful. It seems that this Labour government's answer to everything is to tax it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's...
It's the only thing they know how to do.
Exactly. Where do we begin with it? They're draining the country dry. But the thing is, the paying for the BBC through general taxation has always been this thing that sort of bubbled along in the background and has been less popular, even less popular than the TV licence. It's never had support of more than 10% of the population. It's an awful idea. There are millions of households in this country that don't pay for the BBC anymore. They've been sick to death of it. Right. And they don't watch any live broadcast TV. They don't watch BBC iPlayer, and therefore they can legally not pay for the BBC. And so these people would be forced to pay for it, even though they don't consume any live broadcasting. Yeah. It's just outrageous, really. And like I said, it's even more unpopular than the TV licence, which, as we know, 2/3 of the public want to scrap the TV licence. Well, this isn't the answer.
No, it really isn't. So, go back and start again, we suppose, would be the suggestion. I mean, the other story that I've seen this morning, which was quite staggering, is, I don't know if you've seen this in the Mail, basically the makeup department for BBC News, and it's just BBC News. It doesn't cover, I presume, every other thing that they do, like Strictly or those kinds of shows. But they want to pay £1 million a year to makeup artists, right, to do the makeup just for BBC News, like Sophie Rayworth, Fiona Bruce, any BBC News kind of, TV show. I mean, we have makeup artists in this building who are great, brilliant, fantastic, but they don't get paid £1 million a year.
Well, this is exactly why the BBC should not be paid for under general taxation, because it has no grasp of what is acceptable budgeting. We hear from people who've worked at the BBC who say, the teams there are, 2, 3 times, 4 times the size of other broadcast teams. Right. And this kind of, like you say there with the makeup, they just have no grasp on what is a reasonable budgeting, and therefore it can't be put under general taxation. We need to just scrap the TV licence and make it subscription-only basis, which would mean that people can choose whether they want to pay for that, and they would be motivated by making some profit, and they'd have to cut corners where they had to.
Right. I mean, the idea that they would have to have suddenly no resources whatsoever to do anything. I mean, the numbers of people. I mean, all you got to do is watch the BBC News, of a night and see all those people sitting in the newsroom. There's thousands of them. I don't know what they're all doing, because they miss half the stories that we do. They don't even cover them.
Well, that's the thing. They've not been covering the grooming gang scandal, have they?
Really.
They use what they want to cover when it suits them. And part of this thing with the TV licence and Lisa Nandy's story is that the BBC have said that they will do this mass conversation with the country to find out what the country wants out of the BBC going forward. But we know what the answer to that will be already, because the BBC is it would be on level with the Kremlin for propaganda, wouldn't it, if it was state-owned organisation? But they're already very good with the secure income they have from the TV licence at the moment. They're already very good at sort of marking their own homework and making themselves look sort of extremely popular with the country. But we see time and time again in the polls that people are sick to death of this. And as we see, 500,000 households per year are scrapping the TV licence. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is absolutely awful. They can afford to send people to Syria, they can send people to Los Angeles for the fires, but they can't find their way to Oldham to do that story on the grooming gang. It's funny that. Rebecca, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Campaign director of Defund the BBC. £1 million on makeup. I mean, my makeup's good. but it's not worth £1 million. You might say otherwise, of course. 9:47 is the time. Let's get a voice note from Tim.
Hi, Mike. Tim in Brecon. I rejoice when I hear the common sense that Sharon Davis speaks. Recently up here, the local schools have now got gender-neutral toilets. This has actually now resulted in the young girls not going to the toilet through the day. It's terrible.
That is ridiculous. And they'll have problems, you know, physical problems because of that. And that's happened in places before. We've heard those stories before as well. Phil says this, Mike, AI is a golden goose for Labour as the technology will perform more and more skilled and low-skilled administrative jobs, meaning anyone working in an office today will not have those jobs in 10 years and will then be dependent on the state for income. Well, how is that a good thing? It's not, is it? How about this from Simon in Cardiff? Great show as ever. Just wondering if the ridiculous relinquishing of the Chagos Islands is being done to appease China to secure short-term investment from them. Well, that's an interesting question as well. And Mark says this, remember when Labour used to sing, we'll keep the red flag flying here? I didn't realise it was a Chinese flag. Well, it used to be the Russian flag, didn't it? I mean, they've always been very, very questionable in terms of the countries that they support, the Labour Party. And old David Lammy, we're still working, by the way, on the Travelator for the Labour government, because we're still going to get a graphic done, which is going to show you all of the different positionings around the globe. We've got Rachel from Accounts coming back from China today, we believe. We've got David Lammy off to the Middle East, wreaking havoc. God knows what he's going to do out there. We should ask Lee Anderson, I suppose. Coming up, we'll take more of your calls. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here in about 7 or 8 minutes. This is Talk.
in 2019. She was a dual English-Bangladeshi citizen, so she's not a British citizen, and the courts, the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court, have sided with the government on that. She is not a British citizen, so bringing her here would be unusual now. And let's not ignore the fact that we have brought some of these people back to the UK, mainly children, British children who were, orphaned by their parents, appalling parents who took these children out to possibly the worst place in the world, which has been Syria and Iraq under ISIS to fight for this so-called caliphate. Was actually just a bloodthirsty death cult. So look, we have a duty to those innocent people, and I think innocent people should be looked after, and they're now in the care system, and rightly so, hopefully trying to get some form of life back after the most horrific start in life. But people that are not innocent, people that willingly went, people that not only willingly went, willingly stayed until the very bitter end. The fall of Raqqa in 2017 was 2 years after Shamima Begum, left East London and joined the cause. And look, in the column tomorrow, I think, given that everyone else is using this as an opportunity to make the case that Shamima Begum should come home, and very lofty aim of putting her on trial, I thought it would be a good idea to just have a little look about what it actually would mean to bring her home, because a trial isn't going to happen. The whole point was that these people were able to go commit crimes in a different country, thousands of miles away. If they come home, where's the evidence that is going to be admissible to court? And what law have they broken? They changed the law in 2019 in exactly response to this. It is now illegal to travel to terror hotspots to fight or support groups like ISIS. But that law came in after all of this had happened, and it can't be applied retrospectively. So what they're basically saying in Bring Shamima Begum Home is bring her home to essentially live a life on benefits. Who's going to employ her? No one's going to give her a job, are they?
No, exactly, and also she'll
get bored of her pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah, exactly. She'll need a false identity. She'll need to be paid loads of money to exist in a place. I mean, I think 3 of her children died in Syria, so I don't think she's now got any children. But if she has more children, we'll have to support them. It's an absolute hiding to nothing, isn't it? But then I suppose the alternative question is, where does she go? Does she just stay in a refugee camp in Syria for the rest of her life?
Her fate lies solely in the hands of the Syrians and of the or of the Kurds. So, and also, if we bring her back, think about the sort of the trade-offs that is going to be required for that. Because look, this is a dangerous woman. Intelligence leaked, says that she was, an active fighter. She carried an AK-47. She was alleged to have stitched suicide bombers into the vests. She was, this was no blushing ISIS bride. No. This was someone who was actively, participating in the fight against the West in the ISIS fight. She denies that, but she also says, "Oh well, no one can prove it anyway." So she'd have to be guarded not only for public safety in case she, turned back to her ISIS ways, but also would have to be guarded for her own safety because people will want to, exact revenge on her.
Harry Kohler, his column in The Sun today and every Monday, of course, talking about Shamima Begum. Dean from Dagenham says, Mike, about 6 months ago, I emailed my MP and I waited for a week for a reply. Then they replied and asked me for my address, using the excuse that they wanted to check I was a constituent. I wonder if that was the real reason. And Graham in Rochdale says, Mike, the guy that was spoken to for sending a letter to his MP should think himself lucky that he got a response at all. My local MP in Rochdale is so arrogant he will not even personally answer any emails of the many I've sent him this year. And one final one from Lynn on the washing machine front. I'm going to buck the trend. On my washing machine, I use fast cycle, delicate cycle and soiled cycle occasionally. Don't ask. My freezer was never iced up, so I can only think you may be overfilling it. My microwave, however, I would only buy one that is easy to use a knob for, on with minutes, and another knob for temperature. It's true. This is on the news. Basically, most people don't understand their own washing machine. Julie Hartley-Brewer's here. Very good morning.
I'm completely in there. I love it when I'm on holiday. I get a message from my daughter. Yeah. What cycle do I... Oh, for the love of God.
Just a straightforward one.
I have had calls from my husband before in our early years where it's like, do I put the whites in with the darks?
No. See, that's pretty straightforght.
No.
Right.
No. But, you're a grown man and all that. But we got a new microwave a few years ago, only because, again, last one broke. There was a reason about you want. And genuinely... I use 2 buttons.
Yeah, I'm the same.
I use 2 buttons and just stand in front of it.
I got a new one a couple of years ago. Got all the new appliances were brought in. I've still never worked out how to defrost anything in it. So I just put it on full to defrost for a minute, and it pretty much does the trick. Hello.
But they're far too complicated.
They are. I know.
Also, washing machines. These EcoCycle is basically 16 hours.
Yeah, it's got lights on it.
I know.
You know, you can probably drive it down to the
But
shops.
you remember, of course, we used to, if you bought a washing machine, okay, they wouldn't be as good or whatever, but you bought a washing machine sort of 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It would last 30 years.
Right.
Now, basically, obsolescence built in around 8 years.
And it's not worth fixing it, is it? Because
No,
they come
'cause the
around
cost
and they
of
go,
fixing it is-
200 quid to fix it.
Yeah.
You can buy another one for 300.
Yeah.
Anyway.
God, have you
These
sound
are
like,
the big
do you know what?
stories.
This is like the worst conversation at a bus stop, isn't it?
Isabel
But it's so
Oakeshott-
true.
Isabel Oakeshott didn't want to talk about Tulip Sadiq, wanted to talk about washing machines.
This is